On a beautiful day, a student's thoughts drift as sunlight streams into a classroom filled with anticipation. A light-haired boy sits in class, lost in thought as he listens to the lecture. The social studies teacher drones on, giving a lecture so relaxing it's practically a lullaby. With a quick flip of her textbook, a girl with brown hair reveals she's not studying social studies at all. Done. Inside her book are not historical figures, but the dramatic male leads of a fantasy romance. Meet Soa Yu, an 18-year-old high schooler completely obsessed with her historical romance books. The story begins in a lush garden, where a character starts to speak to Your Grace. A handsome, silver-haired man gently holds a pink-haired woman's hand, telling Emily to say no more. Soa's heart pounds with a bottom as she thinks he's about to ask her out. The pink-haired woman stares back, her eyes wide with anticipation for his next words. Done. The ultimate plot twist. He reveals he's her biological brother. Well, that's one way to kill the mood. Soa mutters her disapproval of the author's weird twist, but someone behind her asks what's wrong with her. Uh-oh. With a menacing crackle and growl, the social studies teacher looms over a terrified Soa. She's been caught. You're coming to the teacher's room with me, he roars. Outside the teacher's room, he scolds her for reading a comic book, reminding her she's the class vice president. As punishment, she's forced to hold her arms up while they tremble, sobbing that she won't do it again. The teacher, Mr. Kim, complains about her, but another teacher defends Soa, who sniffles in gratitude.
But Mr. Kim isn't having it and shouts, "Arms up!" making her flinch with a swoosh. Just then, the charming class president, Yusung Han, walks in carrying a stack of books.
The female teacher greets Yusong, who politely offers to place the books down. He glances over and smiles when he sees Jury.
She praises Yusong, announcing he got the highest score on the last midterms. What a guy. The teacher then pokes Soa, wishing she would follow Yusong's example, leaving her mortified. The teacher asks Yusong to run another errand for her, picking up some books from the stationery store. Yusong looks back with a smile and asks if he can take Soa with him. Her knight in shining armor has arrived. Finally free, Soa walks down the hall with Yusong, her arms throbbing with an ache as she thanks him for the rescue. Yusong explains he would have come sooner, but was delayed by collecting homework. The scene shifts to a warm summer day from their past, filled with the buzz and chirp of insects. A young Soa complains about the boiling heat, annoyed that even her ice cream is melting. With a dramatic lean, she rests against Yusong, whining that she's bored. She calls his name, but he's too focused on his book to even notice her. She flops into his lap with a whine, trying to bribe him with ice cream if he'll play with her. Yusong coolly reminds her about their summer homework, and she realizes she completely forgot and asks to copy his journal. Back in the present, Soa scribbles in her journal, realizing she's acting just like she did in elementary school. She fumes, vowing to expose Yusong in her journal for being such a brat and not letting her copy his. The sound of her pen continues to scribble across the page. She draws a picture of them as kids, writing that even though he's her friend, she doesn't always understand him. She lists his qualities: always reading, polite, nice, and smart. And handsome. She freezes mid-thought, realizing something feels off. The realization hits her like a truck, and a deep blush spreads across her entire face. In another memory, Soa stares intensely at Yusong while eating. He asks what's wrong, offering his fries. She quickly turns away, flustered, denying anything is wrong as she takes a huge bite of her burger. A memory of hands nervously presenting a love letter, asking someone to go out,
Soa watches from the sidelines as another girl confesses her feelings to Yusong.
She wasn't surprised, admitting to herself that it was expected since he's so amazing. Later, she playfully nudges him and teases him about being so popular, but he just asks her to stop.
The sun sets on an empty classroom, casting a warm glow on two students inside.
It's Yusong, sitting intimately close with a girl with vibrant red hair. He's blushing and smiling, looking completely captivated by her. Soa quickly walks past, pretending not to see.
Soa peers through the classroom door window, seeing the red-haired girl and a smitten Yusong. He offers her Pocky, and her playful tone and teasing demeanor seem to make him blush.
Her eyes widen in shock as she takes in the scene before her.
With a sudden drop, her bag hits the floor as she arrives at her destination.
At the stationery store, Yusong wonders which books to get, while Soa thinks to herself that she doesn't even want to date him anymore. She daydreams about her favorite fantasy heroes, the Crown Prince and the Grand Duke, only to be snapped out of it by Yusong, who's ready to go.
As a shop bell rings, Soa tries to convince herself she's perfectly happy with their quiet, uneventful friendship.
But her panicked face says it all. She definitely does not want to be his relationship counselor. Outside, Yusong asks who she's going to ask out, and Soa internally screams that it's obviously the red-haired girl he's so smitten with. He admits he has a crush and plans to ask her out during the school festival's fireworks display, while Soa deadpans that she already knows. Stunned, Soa can't believe she's actually giving dating advice to Yusong of all people. She finally snaps, yelling at him to just figure it out himself. As the crosswalk signal flashes, he pleads for help, but she walks ahead, stubbornly refusing because she's still single. She worries her expression gave her away, just as Yusong calls out her name.
With a clench of her fist, she thinks that even though she's over him, asking her for help is just plain evil.
She turns back to ask what he wants, her irritation clear.
But what she sees leaves her frozen in shock.
A truck's horn blares with a deafening honk. In an instant, Yusong shoves her out of the path of the oncoming vehicle.
They share a stunned look, the gravity of the near miss hanging between them.
The sound of a violent crash echoes through the air. Soa sits on the crosswalk, scraped and surrounded by scattered books, trying to process what just happened. She looks up to see Yusong lying motionless on the pavement and screams his name in terror.
With a desperate rush, she sprints to his side, asking if he's okay as he lets out a pained groan.
She kneels over him, anxiously checking for injuries and asking if he's hurt.
Suddenly, a pair of gray, lifeless hands reach toward her.
Yusong sits up, his expression dazed and confused from the impact. Soa stares back at him, her own confusion growing. Yusong glares at unseen people, demanding to know who they are and accusing someone of an assassination attempt in a bath. Soa is utterly bewildered. She grabs his wrist, asking what's wrong, and wondering if he hit his head.
He forcefully grabs her back, his grip like iron.
With a powerful slam, he shoves her down, coldly stating, "My name is not Yusong Han." Towering over her, he declares he is Hirais de Licariel, the Duke of the Remium Empire. This is definitely not her friend. Elsewhere, students sprint down a school hallway, panting with urgency. Soa frantically dashes through the hall, pushing past a surprised student. She slams a door open, calling out for "Ma'am." She stands there, clothes torn and soaked, her body trembling in shock. A concerned woman with her hair in a ponytail looks back at her. The woman tends to Soa's scraped knees, asking how she got hurt.
The woman tries to take her to the nurse's office, but Soa insists her injuries don't matter right now.
Panicked, she tells the woman they have to find Yusung immediately. The woman asks if something happened to Yusung, and Soa hesitates before answering.
The scene flashes back to the accident, showing Yusong's body lying still on the crosswalk as a crowd gathers. The man who looks like Yusung looms over her, demanding to know who sent her to kill him. Soa can only stare in confusion. He squeezes her shoulder hard, interrogating her about her loyalties and threatening her life. She cries out in pain. He grabs her again, pressing for an answer, but all she can say is Yusong's name. In a flash, she executes a perfect flip to reverse his hold. She struggles against his grip, screaming for him to let go because he's hurting her. With a practiced throw, she sends him flying over her shoulder. He crashes to the ground with a loud slam, with her pinning him down. Turns out, Soa has a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. She sheepishly thinks, oops, not meaning to be so rough, as he looks up in complete shock. She apologizes, but tells him he should have known better, but he snatches her hand away, demanding to know what she just did. He leans in, baffled, revealing he had placed a magical restraint on her and has no idea how she broke free.
Soa stares in confusion as he dismisses her strength as mere luck based on her appearance.
He flares up, warning her to prepare for the consequences of fighting him, leaving her completely baffled. Trying to de-escalate, she grabs his hand and apologizes for pushing him, asking him to calm down.
Suddenly, a deafening honk splits the air as he shoves her out of the way just as the crosswalk light turns red. A car zooms by with a vroom, and Soa realizes with a shock that he just saved her from getting hit a second time. She screams at the reckless drivers before calling out to Yusong, but when she looks, he's completely vanished. With a huff, the boy who looks like Yusong leans against a wall in an alley, having narrowly escaped. Doom! He looks up in a panic, wondering what in the world is happening in this strange place.
With a nervous glance, he peeks around the corner to see police searching for him, and he despairs over his terrible luck. He blames his misfortune on one person, that woman he just ran into. He scoffs at the hideous modern clothes people are wearing, like a guy in a hoodie and a girl walking her dog. Their bizarre slang confuses him even more, leaving him utterly lost as a couple plans to hit up a cafe. With the wee-woo of approaching sirens and a sudden rush, someone shouts to stop right there. He breaks into a run as police close in, defiantly thinking they're being ridiculous. Fuming with a crackle and a growl, he feels the disrespect to his noble house, wondering where on earth he is. For a silent moment, he stands perfectly still, plotting his next move. With a determined glance, he realizes he needs some kind of weapon. He scans the area, and his eyes land on the perfect tool for the job, a dusty blue dustpan. He grabs his new weapon, thinking it's not his first choice, but it will have to do. Dustpan acquired. With a purposeful step, he vows to punish those responsible for stranding him here as soon as he returns to his estate. But he suddenly stops dead in his tracks. Freeze. His eyes widen in shock at the sight before him. He realizes he's staring at the very same monsters he saw before. Cars stopped at a traffic light. The street is filled with them, a terrifying army of motionless metal beasts. He takes a cautious step forward, convinced his homeland of Remium is under attack by these strange creatures. With an athletic leap, he lands on the back of a white car, testing to see if the monster is even alive.
He places a hand on its surface, noting he's never encountered a monster like this before. The light flashes green, and a car speeds by with a loud vroom. He turns in surprise, not expecting the sudden movement. The car beneath him lurches forward with a vroom, and he shouts, "It moved!" He's left completely stunned, his mind unable to process the chaos unfolding around him. Back in the classroom, Soa opens her bag with a rustle, pulling out her favorite book. She sighs, regretting her decision to return to the classroom alone. She remembers the teacher telling her to go to the hospital while she looked for Yusong.
Soa had insisted on helping, but the teacher pointed to her bruised knees, leaving her speechless.
With a heavy thud, she places the fantasy novel on her desk, lamenting that she's made another dumb decision.
Shaking off her regret, she resolves to pack her things and go find Yusong herself. But as she holds the book, she pauses, a thought striking her. Staring at the silver-haired duke on the cover, who's a dead ringer for Yusong, she feels a strange sense of déjà vu. A memory of Yusong's dazed expression flashes in her mind, and she realizes she's just had the most absurd idea. Clutching the book, her eyes widen as a wild theory begins to form. The scene cuts to the outside of a local police station. Inside, a phone rings until an officer answers with a click. A frantic woman calls from an intersection, while a policewoman calmly asks her to describe the situation. The caller nervously describes a man in a suit lying on the ground near a crosswalk. She mentions he seems injured, possibly from a hit and run, but is unresponsive. The caller reports a man standing on a moving car as he surfs down the road, while onlookers whisper in disbelief. A little boy points in amazement, but his mom quickly pulls him away from the bizarre scene. Overwhelmed by the commotion, the woman on the phone asks the officer for a moment to collect herself. The officer suggests getting the caller's name, which she gives as Soe. The policewoman verifies the location of the first call and urgently dispatches ambulances and patrol cars. Soe confirms the intersection, and the policewoman assures her that help is coming. The policewoman turns to her colleague, who confirms the car surfer is the same person from the security footage they were looking for. She gets back on the phone, assuring the caller that officers are on their way. With a final vroom, the boy who looks like Yusong continues his wild ride down the street, completely oblivious. He panics, thinking the monster is going wild, and wondering how he can possibly stop it. Riding the car like a mechanical bull, he realizes he has no time to investigate and must act now. With a determined swoosh, he decides to kill the beast in a single strike with his trusty dustpan. He plunges his weapon into the car's interior with a mighty stab, right next to a very surprised driver. The driver's face is a perfect picture of what is happening right now, as his earbud goes flying. After a loud crash, Hurice lands on the pavement, groaning and wondering if he managed to kill it. With a fling of his arm, the furious driver gets out, yelling about him being on his car, while Hurice curses that he only pierced its shell. Tires screech as police cars surround them, and officers yell for him to get down. With a dash, he's on the run again as cops give chase, leaving the driver to explain to a bystander that a kid just attacked his car with a dustpan. He runs, panting with a huff, frantically looking for a place to go. He sweats, realizing he's completely lost and knows nothing about this strange world. Spotting a clothing store, he decides to throw caution to the wind and leave his next move to fate. Inside, a cheerful employee hums a little tune, completely unaware of the chaos heading her way. With a massive shatter, he bursts through the glass door, sending the employee into a terrified scream. As the startled woman asks if he's a customer, he gives her a suspicious side-eye, thinking, Or are you a robber? The police storm in right behind him, yelling for the employee to get him as she points the way. With a quick turn, he spots a door and sees his chance for a clean getaway. He makes a mad dash for it, ignoring the employee's frantic shouts to wait. He slams the door shut, leaving the confused employee wondering why on earth he ran into the fitting room. Concluding he must be a robber, she does the sensible thing and, with a click, locks him inside. He frantically looks around the tiny room, realizing with horror that there's no other exit. He's been tricked. Knowing he's trapped, he steels himself to face his enemies head-on as a lock clicks shut somewhere in the room. He grabs a clothes hanger, ready to fight, thinking that even though he's outnumbered, he still has a chance. He prepares to strike the second the door opens, but then he suddenly comes to a pause. The hand touches his shoulder, and he freezes in absolute shock. He whirls around to face a mysterious figure, demanding to know who they are. The scene shifts as a pair of elegant dress shoes takes a deliberate step. Elsewhere, in another time, a regal duke is welcomed home as a door creaks open. A servant informs him his bath is ready. With a dramatic swish, he removes his magnificent crimson cape. Maids bow their heads as he walks past them with purpose. He disrobes and steps into a steaming, petal-filled bath with a gentle splash. In the water, he notes the scent is stronger than usual, but a maid assures him it's the same as always. He thinks it's strange how different it feels as his servants wait patiently in the grand bathhouse. He suddenly pauses, a strange sensation washing over him as he feels his body begin to go limp, his head swaying forward uncontrollably. With a final splash, he collapses into the water as his attendants scream his title in terror. Back in the present, the real Yuseong sits handcuffed in a police car, looking completely bewildered and asking where he is. Meanwhile, Soa pounds on a door with a loud bang, 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 shouting Yuseong's name. Leaning back in frustration, she considers the possibility that he just never came home. But she can't shake the feeling that something about this entire situation is deeply, fundamentally wrong. She recalls the unbelievable events, getting hit by a truck but being fine, his bizarre proclamations, and their strange fight. Her eyes fall upon her fantasy novel, featuring a silver-haired duke on the cover who is a dead ringer for Yuseong. She remembers his wild claim of being the Duke of the Remium Empire. With a gasp, she realizes her crazy theory might not be so crazy after all. It's the only thing that makes sense. She flings her bag into what appears to be Yuseong's apartment, ready to find some answers. Her voice echoes in the empty room as she desperately calls out for Yuseong. At the police station, a dejected Hirais stares blankly ahead, looking utterly defeated. Sitting behind bars, he defiantly reminds himself of his true identity, Hirais de Licoriel. He seethes in his holding cell, fuming that these commoners would dare treat him this way. At the front desk, the driver and the store owner are in full-on Karen mode, complaining loudly as an officer calmly tells them to wait for his guardian. With an angry turn, a man yells at someone off-screen. An annoyed Hirais listens as the man accuses him of ruining his car and demands to know how he'll fix it. With a dismissive snort, Hirais calls the man incredibly loud. He completely ignores the man, who is now screaming that he's a little brat. A hazy memory shows a hand reaching for a startled Hair Eyes. Back in the present, Hair Eyes sits in a holding cell, realizing the gravity of his situation. He's trapped in a stranger's body. While a couple argues outside his cell, he desperately wonders where his own body could be. He glances up, a sharp click and clack echoing as he hears someone approaching. With a decisive step, a well-dressed woman with purple hair walks into the police station. A police officer greets her as she asks if she's Yusung's legal guardian. The woman, Yusung's aunt, stands with her arms crossed, her expression severe. An aerial view shows the police station at dusk. As she approaches, Hair Eyes watches her, wondering if this woman knows the body's original owner. With a heavy sigh, she asks him if he has any shame, leaving him momentarily stunned. She reminds him of a broken promise and angrily asks if he caused this mess because he's bored with school. With a sharp turn, she warns him not to cause any more trouble before he's an adult. She gives him a final ultimatum. If she gets another call like this, it's all over. Elsewhere, a distraught So-ah is huddled in a corner, having searched everywhere for Yuzhang without success. A quick flashback shows a worried-looking Yusong. The memory continues, showing Yusong in a tense moment with a girl. Back in the present, So-ah answers a sudden phone call. The practice leader reassures her that Yusong's aunt went to get him, so everything is fine. So-ah repeats the words, his aunt, with dawning concern. A sudden flash of lightning accompanies her memory. Yuzhang and his aunt do not get along. A storm begins to rumble outside as the rain pours down. 3 hours pass, but Yusong never comes home. So-ah watches the relentless downpour, realizing the storm isn't letting up. Determined, she decides she can't wait any longer and will go look for him one last time. Armed with a yellow umbrella, she runs out into the torrential rain. As thunder rumbles, she searches frantically, thinking it's as if he's vanished into thin air. She stops at an empty, rain-soaked playground, doubting he's actually with his aunt. As the rain intensifies, she feels helpless, having run out of places to look for him. With a sigh, she decides to head back for now, turning to leave. But then she stops dead in her tracks, spotting Hair Eyes huddled by some dumpsters across the way. Here, he looks up, his face streaked with rain, as he feels her gaze. So-ah stares back, completely shocked to find him in such a state. Later, he gestures for her to come inside as he holds the door to an apartment open with a fling. Hears takes a step inside, surveying the small living room with a critical eye. He scoffs at the tiny foxhole, earning an angry growl from So-ah, who threatens to kick him out. She turns away, silently wondering how she ended up in this crazy situation. Her mind flashes back to the moment she found him crouching alone in the rain. In the memory, Hair Eyes recognizes her with a splash, calling her that woman from before. She says Yusong's name, then stops herself, realizing who she's really talking to. Recalling the romance novel, she asks if he's the Duke, causing him to freeze in place. He's shocked she knows his title, while she can't believe it's actually him. She cautiously approaches, asking what he's doing by a dumpster, and inviting him to talk somewhere dry. He recoils with a snatch, defensively shouting that he has no reason to trust her. Unfazed, she asks if he'd rather just stay out in the rain all night. She wordlessly extends her umbrella, offering him shelter from the storm. Back in the apartment, she ushers him toward the bathroom, suggesting he shower so they can finally talk. With a firm push and a shove, she forces him into the bathroom, pointing out how dirty his hands are and telling him to get scrubbing. With a nervous glance and a hard stare,
He's completely baffled as she tells him to wash up before he catches a cold. As she leaves to get him a change of clothes, he calls out for her to wait, leaving her confused. He seriously asks where the bath is, and she can only respond with a bewildered "what?" Losing her patience, she tells Yusong to stop joking and take a shower, but he insists he's being serious. Annoyed, he wonders how he's supposed to wash with no bath until his eyes land on the toilet, and a terrible idea is born. He kneels before the tiny bath, thinking it's fitting for a commoner's house, while she looks on in absolute horror. She frantically grabs his face, yelling at him not to stick his head in the toilet and to use the shower head, but he has no idea what that is. With a turn and a schwa, she demonstrates the shower, leaving him to wonder if it's a magical object, and her to question his sanity. Crying with frustration, she can't believe he's actually committed to this medieval duke persona. With a defeated sigh, she gives him a crash course on how to use a shower, still in disbelief over the whole situation. Suddenly, he begins to tremble and shake uncontrollably, and she worriedly asks what's wrong. He starts to sway violently, clearly losing control. With a final slump, he collapses onto the bathroom floor, leaving her staring in total shock. Her voice echoes in a blur as she desperately calls out Yusong's name. The scene shifts outside to a heavy downpour as rain lashes against the apartment building with a loud schwa. Lying in bed with a huff and a pant, he's clearly running a high fever. Soa's younger brother, Yoonyak, struggles to support the unconscious boy while she thanks him for his help. Soa is relieved her brother was around to help her wash and dress Yusong. Yoonyak reminds her about her promise of 2 orders of fried chicken, and she tells him to go ahead and order it when he gets home. With a soft step, she sits by the bed, thinking it's strange they've grown so distant despite living right next door. Enyak's attention is caught by a framed picture on the shelf. The photo shows a much younger Yusong with a woman, likely his mother. Enyak happily declares he's eating all the chicken and leaves, warning her not to complain later. As the door slams shut, she turns her attention back to the boy sleeping in the bed. Her eyes fill with worry and confusion, a single bead of sweat rolling down her face. Exhausted, she slumps over in a chair, admitting she still has no idea what's really going on. A whirlwind of recent memories floods her mind, leaving her completely overwhelmed. She watches him sleep, seriously considering the wild possibility that a duke is actually possessing his body. She concludes it's the only plausible answer, knowing the real Yusong would never make such a pained face. The scene shifts to a solemn memorial room, implying a funeral is taking place. A young Yusong stands alone in a suit, looking utterly lost and heartbroken. A younger Soa looks at him with deep regret, whispering that she's sorry. In the darkness, her apology echoes with guilt, as she thinks, "It's all my fault." Back in the present, her expression hardens with resolve as she vows to get the real Yusong back. A thorny vine appears, symbolizing her determination as she thinks, "After all, I owe him that much." The boy in the bed mumbles and turns over in his sleep. His vision is a dizzying blur as his eyes flutter open, and he wonders where he is. With a gentle lean, Soa gets close and asks if he remembers her. He lets out a scream and jumps back in terror, demanding to know why a commoner is in his presence as she confirms her suspicions. He accuses her of following him and plotting against him, but with a scoff, she reminds him she's the one who saved him. He's taken aback, realizing he must have lost consciousness after she tells him how scared she was.
Now that he seems to be feeling better, she stands with her hands on her hips and says it's time for them to talk.
They sit across from each other, a tense silence hanging in the air before their confrontation. He scoffs, running a hand through his hair in frustration, unable to believe she doesn't know his name.
She holds up a mirror to his face, cutting straight to the point. "You're the one possessing my friend's body." He stares at his reflection in the mirror, stunned into silence. Conceding that he may be in another world, he still demands to know why she's following him. He accuses her of being involved in some kind of sorcery, but she quickly denies it. She explains that she's friends with the body's owner and that he's incredibly important to her. With his arms crossed, Hirai smirks and asks what she wants with him now that she has him cornered. Soa takes a deep breath, steeling herself as she begins to lay out her plan. In her mind, she lays out the facts. This man is Hirai Delicario, a fantasy duke who possessed her friend Yuseong's body after he got hit by a truck. She recalls that he has no idea how it happened, remembering his terrified reaction when he first woke up in this world. Worse, he's already become an internet meme, from car surfing to dumpster diving, all while in the body of her childhood crush. She knows for a fact the real Yuseong would never do any of those things. Determined to prevent another public disaster, she offers him a deal, and he eyes her suspiciously. With a loud bam, she slams a handwritten contract down on the table between them. A dramatic dun-dun echoes as they face off, the contract representing their tense truce. She confidently declares that, believe it or not, she's an expert on both of their worlds. With a scratch of a pen, he scoffs, saying he'll be the judge of that as he prepares to review her terms. Soa's narration explains their simple, shared goals. The Duke just wanted to go home, and she just wanted her crush to live a normal, quiet life again. The formal agreement is laid out. Hirai will learn about modern life from Soa. She'll help him get home, and he will stop causing trouble and act like Yuseong. Hirai complains that all the restrictions are on him, but Soa bluntly reminds him she's the one doing him a favor. He calls her insolent, about to tear up the deal, but a loud grumble from his stomach completely ruins his noble tirade. Meanwhile, Yoonhyuk arrives home and sets 2 boxes of fresh fried chicken on the table. His eyes sparkle with pure joy as he gazes upon the golden, crispy feast before him. Just as he's about to take a bite with a happy nom, Soa bursts through the door, yelling his name and demanding her chicken. Annoyed at her terrible timing, he declares that all 4 drumsticks are his and his alone. But she's faster, snatching a box and telling him to just order another one as he protests loudly. With a frustrated slam of the door, he yells her name, complaining that she totally killed his vibe. A glorious close-up of the chicken steams with a gentle puff, looking absolutely delicious. Back at the apartment, Soa offers the chicken to Hirai, assuming he's hungry after his chaotic day. His face immediately fills with distrust as he asks if she poisoned it, earning an exasperated look from her. Fine, more for me, she thinks, and with a decisive raise, she lifts a piece to her own mouth. She takes a bite with an incredibly satisfying crunch. The piece of chicken is shown to be perfectly crispy on the outside and unbelievably juicy on the inside. Hirai watches her, his proud facade cracking as he realizes he might be missing out. After a brief hesitate, his hunger wins, and he cautiously reaches into the box. The first bite is a revelation. He's overwhelmed by the miracle of Korean fried chicken, wondering what this heavenly food could possibly be.
He stares at the chicken in shock as she cheekily asks if he likes it.
Trying to play it cool, he declares that he supposes this commoner food will suffice.
She lets out a soft chuckle, thinking to herself that for a moment he sounded just like the real Yusong.
With a little tap, she clinks her chicken against his, hoping this means he'll adjust to his new life quickly.
But his mood suddenly darkens, and he furiously declares that their agreement is off.
Soa looks on in shock as the narrator reveals their carefully crafted deal didn't even last a single day. With a nervous gulp, they both lean over the table, flushed with frustration as they face their next challenge. Hayreese struggles miserably with chopsticks, sending his food on a roll with a clumsy drop. Soa frantically tries to demonstrate the proper technique, her patience clearly wearing thin. He tries and fails again, dropping everything with a clatter as she finally lets out a scream of pure frustration. The table is a complete mess, setting the scene for how this whole disaster started. With a soft thud, she pulls out her backpack, ready to begin her lesson plan. A dramatic dun-dun sounds as she pulls out a notebook, leaving Hayreese to wonder what she's up to now. She presents her agenda, a crash course on the basics of modern life, from using chopsticks to getting dressed. He finds the list insultingly simple, but she insists their cultures are too different, while he privately wonders if she thinks he's a fool. He likens it to his childhood etiquette lessons, and with the memory of a formal dinner, reluctantly agrees to try. But his first taste of the new food ends instantly as he spits it out in disgust. He erupts into a violent cough, accusing her of poisoning him with the intensely flavored food. While she tries to explain that it's just kimchi, he childishly demands water, completely ignoring her. The day starts with the sound of a shatter and a crash as their first lesson, washing dishes, ends in total failure. Soa decides doing the dishes is too advanced and pivots to a shower tutorial, hoping he can't possibly break that. She cringes internally, still not over the fact he tried to wash his face with toilet water the night before. He confidently grabs the shower head and, with a sharp twist, turns the knob. Confused when nothing comes out, he turns the nozzle to inspect it, just as she screams for him to stop. Too late, a powerful splash of water blasts them both directly in the face. Now completely soaked, they stand there dripping in stunned silence. He gets his wet shirt stuck over his head and formally requests Soa's assistance, leaving her completely bewildered. Still trapped in his shirt, he imperiously demands that she solve this issue for him. With a synchronized slump, they both collapse onto the couch, utterly exhausted by their domestic misadventures. Letting out a defeated sigh, Soa can't believe how bad this is, asking him why he's not good at anything. She laments that every fantasy hero she's ever read about was brilliant and capable, unlike the disaster sitting next to her. She demands to know how he even survived until now, and he calmly explains that his maids took care of everything. Of course, she thinks, realizing an aristocrat like him would have never done a single household chore in his life. A loud grumble from her stomach cuts through the tension. Looking absolutely gaunt, she declares that she's hungry. With a final sigh, she pulls out a packet of instant noodles with a rustle, announcing it's the dish of the day. She gives him one simple job: watch the water and tell her when it boils. He readily agrees. With a series of quick chops, she expertly slices the scallions. After a period of suspicious silence, she nervously asks about the water's status.
She thinks there's no way he could mess this up, but his panicked, sweaty face says otherwise. A terrible gut feeling washes over her as her eyes widen in horror.
A furious roar erupts as the pot boils over into a mountain of foam, and she screams, "What on earth did you do?"
He panics, asking if he should pour water on it, but she shoves him aside with a click, turning off the stove herself. As she cleans up his mess, she asks how he couldn't handle such a simple task, and he can only admit that it's quite unfortunate. Now officially hangry, she fumes that his only job was to watch the water. Giving up completely, she decides to order takeout, telling him she has no energy left to cook. She finally snaps, telling him that at this rate, he can't even handle pretending to be Yusong, let alone any real responsibilities. Her words trigger a dark memory of a shadowy figure questioning if there were any responsibilities he could handle. His face twists into a furious scowl, his patience completely gone. Soa pauses her takeout order and coldly tells him to forget about their deal. She turns to him in disbelief, asking if he's serious after she wasted hours trying to teach him. He sneers that if he's as useless as she says, her lessons are pointless, and he'd rather find his own way home. They stand locked in a tense confrontation as she insists she never said that. He warns her that if she's going to look at him with such disdain, it's best they go their separate ways, leaving her speechless. With a determined step, she turns and walks out on him. Taking another firm step, she strides out of the apartment. The door slams shut, leaving Hirai standing alone in the quiet kitchen. Fuming in her own apartment, she can't believe he'd tell her to go our separate ways after she wasted her whole day trying to help. She declares she has no reason to put up with his attitude, reminding herself she's only doing this for Yusong. Back at his place, Hirai stands alone, his anger slowly fading into regret. He quietly admits to himself that he may have gotten too agitated, but he confesses that it's hurtful when she looks at him with those disappointed eyes. His attention is drawn to a purple backpack she left on the floor. Picking it up, he realizes she forgot her bag. He stares at the bag, a look of contemplation on his face. Meanwhile, So-e lies exhausted in her bed, staring up at the ceiling. She wonders if she was too harsh, but quickly gets angry again, thinking he shouldn't have given up so easily. With a worried sigh, she starts imagining all the terrible things Hirai's could do to Yusong's body. In the other apartment, Hirai sits on the floor and begins to flip through a book he found in her bag. With a weary rise, Soa gets up, deciding she needs to pack for school tomorrow. But her room is empty. She realizes with a start that her bag is gone. Hesitating at the door, she sighs, thinking she should probably apologize to Hirai's. She steels herself, remembering they both got upset and that she can't just give up on him. Suddenly, a sharp knock-knock comes from her front door. She opens it to find Hirai standing on the other side. An awkward silence hangs between them as they just stare at each other. Hirai breaks the silence, handing her the bag and explaining she left it behind. He then nervously presents a book he found inside. Holding it up, he asks if her entire knowledge of his world comes from this one romance novel, and she sheepishly admits it does. He tells her that she's only partially correct, leaving her completely baffled. Hirai explains that while the Duke in the book is similar to the nobles of his world, he's not a real person, just a character built from pure fantasy. Soa realizes she can't expect him to be perfect right from the start. She comes to terms with the fact that he's not some fantasy duke from a novel. All she wants is for them to get along until he can finally go back home. Hirice looks down thoughtfully and agrees they can both put in more effort.
With a new understanding reached, they stand together in the quiet hallway. Later, the scene shifts to the bright lights of a convenience store. As an apology, Hirice offers to treat her to whatever she wants, and she looks thrilled at the prospect. He curiously inspects the freezer, asking if the colorful packages are ice bars, which she confirms are a type of dessert. He proudly mentions they have ice cream in his home world of Remium, causing her to nervously clear her throat. She asks him which one he wants to try, and he silently considers his choice. He makes his selection, a chestnut bar. Outside, Soa cackles, teasing that only a grandpa would pick a chestnut bar, but he insists he likes the wrapping and the taste. She suggests other traditional snacks he might like and asks if he wants to try them, prompting him to ask what they are. Nom nom! He tries the snacks and actually likes them, which makes her burst out laughing. She jokes about his age, asking if he's 40, but he deadpans that he's 19, which she finds impossible to believe. The evening at the convenience store comes to a close. Back home, Soa tells him not to touch anything and that she'll teach him about modern appliances tomorrow, but he insists he's not a child. He turns to leave for the night, promising to see her in the morning. Soa watches him go with a pensive look on her face. With a heavy slump, she collapses, exhausted after a long day of teaching and arguing. Despite the chaos, a strange feeling begins to settle in her heart. Looking out the window, she finds herself smiling. In a sneak peek, Hirice is ready for his first day of school, but the thought of the Duke goes to school has Soa absolutely mortified. Chirp, chirp, chitter. A new day begins on a sunlit school rooftop. Loom. Soa's expression turns deadly serious as she announces they've postponed it long enough. It's time to go. When she declares they're going tomorrow, a startled Hirice nearly drops his mug, asking where exactly they're headed. Flinch. He recoils as she turns to face him with an intense gaze. A montage shows their chaotic learning period, from masses to laundry mishaps, as Hirice slowly adjusts to life in Korea. The narration notes this all happened after their big fight, as Hirice chills on the couch like a true K-Duke. The scene shifts to a quiet school hallway outside the teacher's room. A voice calls out Soa's name, and she turns around, balancing a huge stack of books. A teacher asks if Yu Seong is absent again, putting Soa on the spot. The problem is revealed. Yu Seong's attendance record is filled with excused absences, and he's missed way too many days. Realizing this can't continue, Soa forces a strained, cheerful smile. Done. Now standing before the school gates, Soa admits she's terrified now that they're actually here. With a conspiratorial whisper, she leans in to give Hirice one last reminder. He gives a confident nod, assuring her that he remembers everything she told him. With a determined slide, Soa announces she's opening the classroom door. The door opens to a classroom alive with the bustle and chatter of students. Two boys turn around in surprise, one of them asking, "Huh?" The room erupts as students spot Hirice at a desk, shouting Yu Song's name in disbelief. With a little spring in his step, he adjusts himself in his seat, wearing some very casual slides. A mob of students immediately rush him, shoving a girl aside as they pepper him with questions about his 2-day absence. Watching from afar, Soa thinks that Yu Song is just as popular as she remembered. She begins to panic, wondering if Hirice can pull this off as he starts to freeze under the intense scrutiny. Hirice frantically tries to recall his instructions for just this kind of situation. In a flashback, Soa lays out the plan. Since Yu Song is so popular, he should just act incredibly sick to avoid talking.
Back in the present, Hirice puts on a dramatic performance, letting out a series of loud coughs as his classmates ask if he's okay. He feebly staggers through the crowd, apologizing for still being sick, and they awkwardly let him pass. He glances back at Soa, anxiously wondering how he did with his little act. Soa gives him a subtle thumbs up, signaling he did a good job. He takes a few more steps toward his desk, the plan seemingly working. With a final plop, he collapses onto his desk, and Soa breathes a sigh of relief that he followed her directions perfectly. His classmates whisper among themselves, convinced Yusong must be extremely ill. With a swish, Hirice settles in, thinking he just needs to ride this out until the school day ends. But he quickly lifts his head, wondering what that strange sensation was. His classmates are covering him with a mountain of blankets, wishing him a speedy recovery. Buried under a massive pile of blankets in the middle of summer, he starts overheating, thinking he's way too hot. Fuming, Hirice shoots a fiery glower towards Soa, thinking this was definitely not part of the plan. Soa can only offer a strained thumbs up of encouragement, while Hirice silently vows revenge. Later, the classroom buzzes with excitement as students get ready for lunchtime. The same two classmates approach Hirice to invite him to lunch, but one wisely shushes the other. Seeing him asleep, they decide to let him rest, and the boy reluctantly agrees. The students rush out, leaving the classroom quiet except for Hirice and Soa. As the classroom goes silent, Soa rises from her seat to check on him. She tells him he can get up now, causing him to gasp in surprise as he complains about the foolish ordeal. Just as she reassures him, the door bursts open and a student shouts, looking for the class president. Both Soa and Hirice whip around, completely shocked by the sudden interruption. A girl with green hair and glasses stands at the doorway, reminding Yusong it's time for the student assembly meeting. Soa internally panics, realizing she completely forgot Yusong's role as class president, and knowing she can't let Hirice go. She quickly throws an arm around a bewildered Hirice, loudly insisting he's far too sick to attend. With a supportive squeeze, she tells him to rest, and he plays along with a weak cough, confirming he's sick. Soa volunteers to go in his place as vice president, an offer the other girl accepts. As the two girls walk away, Soa nervously hopes that leaving him alone will be okay. Left all alone in the vast, empty classroom, Hirice feels utterly abandoned. He scoffs at the small classroom, comparing it to his dressing room and calling it a stable. He suddenly freezes as he hears students returning, his brief moment of peace shattered. His classmates immediately surround him again, asking how he's feeling, and without Soa to run interference, he thinks, oh no. One boy aggressively pulls on his cheeks, declaring he must have a serious disease, while Hirice silently wonders if the boy has a death wish. Another boy snatches a cup of spicy noodles from a girl named So-eun, insisting she offered Hirice a bite. Much to her outrage, the boy holds out a steaming bite of noodles, urging Hirice to eat it quickly. Hirice just stares at the offering, completely baffled by this turn of events. Meanwhile, the student assembly meeting is underway in another classroom. The green-haired girl begins the meeting, turning the discussion to the upcoming school festival. Soa's mind drifts, consumed with worry because she left Hirice completely unsupervised. She keeps wondering if he is okay and can't focus on the discussion.
Sitting in the meeting, she desperately hopes that His Grace doesn't do anything too strange while she's gone. But as students laugh and chatter in the hallway, it's clear the day is far from over.
In the middle of the meeting, Soa worries about Hirai's, but a red-haired girl taps her shoulder, getting her attention. With a bright floral background, the girl asks if Soa is the student rep from classroom 3.
An introduction panel reveals the girl is Hymin Beck, and more importantly, she's Yusong's crush. With a dazzling beam, Hymin asks why Soa came to the meeting instead of Yusong. Soa panics internally, recognizing the girl from a memory of her smiling brightly.
In the hallway, Soa quickly explains that Yusong wasn't feeling well today, which Hymin accepts.
Hymin waves a cheerful goodbye, and Soa nervously waves back.
Breathing a sigh of relief, Soa thinks she managed to handle that potential disaster pretty well.
With a beep, she buys a cream bun at the school store, a special treat for Hirai's. Back in the classroom, a girl with long light blue hair gives her a little nudge, calling her name. The new girl is Sayan Seo, Soa's friend from the track and field team. Jian confronts her for skipping practice, but Soa blames it on the student assembly meeting.
Jian isn't buying it, revealing she saw Soa with Yusong that morning, leaving Soa completely stunned.
A flashback shows Jian glancing over during track practice to see Soa and a boy she assumes is Yusong walking together. Jian points out that she's never seen them hanging out before, her suspicion growing. Soa awkwardly explains she'll be spending more time with him for a bit, and Jian questions if she's really okay with that. Suddenly, the bustle and yell of a commotion from inside the classroom cuts their conversation short. They peer through the classroom door window, wondering why it's so incredibly loud inside. Soe's eyes widen in absolute terror as she sees what's happening. It's pure chaos. With a loud crash, Hirai's has tackled another student and pinned him to the floor. Panting with rage, Hirai's glares down at the terrified boy and declares, "I knew it." He furiously accuses the boy of being an assassin and demands to know who sent him to kill him. With a brutal choke, he grips the student's collar, tightening his hold. Watching from the doorway, Soe can't believe what she's hearing, wondering what on earth he's talking about. The scene briefly cuts to a single, now empty desk, a symbol of the shattered peace. The loom of tension fills the classroom as the other students can only watch in shock. Classmates whisper and murmur, wondering what's wrong with Yusong and why no one can stop them. Hirai's continues his unhinged interrogation, asking if the boy was ordered to poison him, as Soe looks on in despair. He spots Soe and yells for her to stay back, causing her to flinch in surprise. Hirai's declares the boy is an assassin, his proof being that he was offered something even fiercer than kimchi. His proof turns out to be a cup of spicy instant noodles, now spilled all over the floor. Soe forces a pained, awkward smile, completely mortified by the misunderstanding. After managing to break up the fight, Soe sits between the two boys as an exhausted referee, while her friend Jian watches with a tired sigh. Sipping milk to cool his tongue, Hirai's grandly announces he'll forgive the boy, just this once. But he follows it up with a death threat, promising the boy will forfeit his life if he tries it again, leaving him a sniffling mess. Soa tries to play peacemaker, laughing nervously and explaining Yusong is too sick for spicy food, but the other boy is skeptical. Hirai still doesn't get it, demanding to know what the poison was, while Jian looks on utterly unimpressed.
A light bulb goes off for Jian as she finally understands what Soa meant when she said Yusong was sick.
Later, class is in session, and Here Eyes is calmly doing his work with a scribble and a scratch. But then, with a soft drop, he accidentally lets his pen slip from his fingers. The pen lands near a girl's desk as the teacher lectures at the front of the room. He racks his brain, trying to remember the girl's name from the photos Soa showed him, landing on Soan. Turning on the charm, Hirai lets out a sparkle and asks, "Lady Soan, could you pick up my pen for me?" Soan just stares back, completely baffled by the bizarrely formal request. For a brief moment, the entire classroom falls into a stunned silence. Then the room absolutely explodes with uncontrollable laughter. Students can't believe their ears, howling with laughter over him calling her Lady Soan. As a guffaw echoes through the room, classmates mercilessly tease the mortified Soan, asking if she's royalty. Soa just slumps over her desk, letting out a weary sigh, drowning in secondhand embarrassment. Here Eyes, however, is completely unbothered, glaring at the teacher and thinking, "How dare you try to give me an order?" As the teacher moves to the next page, Here Eyes stretches triumphantly, much to Soa's dismay. With a final, cheerful ring, the school day officially comes to an end. A girl with a ponytail announces the cleaning assignments are posted, much to the class's collective groan. Soa privately begs Here Eyes to stop his weird antics, but he insists he's been trying his best this whole time. The girl splits the class into two groups, one for the classroom and one for the hallway. Soa tells Here Eyes she's cleaning the hallway, leaving him with one simple job: just clean the classroom. When he questions why they even have to clean, she snaps back, ordering him not to ask questions. A boy with orange hair hands Here Eyes a mop, cheerfully telling Yusung it's time to start sweeping. With a casual toss, the boy throws the mop to a very startled Here Eyes. Here Eyes examines the mop, noting its surprisingly good grip, when suddenly a brilliant flash of light transforms it into an ornate sword. Staring at the mop sword in his hands, he nervously wonders if he's allowed to swing it. With a mighty whoosh, he decides the answer is yes and lets it fly. A powerful swing shatters the classroom window, sending debris flying and terrifying his classmate. Hearing the crash from the hallway, Soa comes to a sudden freeze. With a nervous creak, she slowly turns around, already dreading what she's about to see. She and the other students can only stare in disbelief at the completely wrecked classroom. Soa is utterly speechless, muttering a horrified, "Oh my." The teacher lectures, Haris, lamenting that this destructive behavior is completely out of character for Yusong. Haris stands nervously outside the teacher's room, awaiting his punishment. The teacher sternly reminds him he could have hurt someone and that there will be consequences. His sentence is delivered. He'll be cleaning the entire campus for a week, and he doesn't look thrilled. The scene shifts to the school's outdoor trash and recycling area. As a broom sweeps across the pavement, Soa tells him to watch closely. She's there with him, ready to teach him how to properly clean as part of his punishment. She cheerfully assigns him a section, reminding him to pick up all the garbage. Haris just stares back at her, his expression a perfect blank slate of royal indifference. But then, with a loud fling, Soa bursts into the teacher's room, shouting for the teacher's attention. She shocks everyone by volunteering to stay and clean with him, leaving the teacher speechless. As he continues to sweep, Haris internally grumbles that he never asked for her help. With a final toss, he throws out the last bag of trash.
Soa lets out a tired groan and stretches, announcing they're finally done and can head home. Later that night, Soa is on the phone with her friend Jiyeon, who thinks she shouldn't have taken the penalty. Soa apologizes for leaving her to walk home alone, but Jiyeon reassures her it's fine. Jiyeon notes how strange Yusong was acting, and Soa nervously blames it on him hitting his head. Her friend presses further, asking if Soa is truly okay, leaving her wondering what she means. Jiyeon bluntly asks if being around him makes her uncomfortable, catching Soa completely off guard. Soa remains silent, thinking to herself that it's okay because he's not the real Yusong anyway. The next day at school, the narrator reveals that Hiris actually started to behave much better. He's seen in class, quietly concentrating on his work, looking genuinely focused. Soa watches him, thinking that it really seems like he's trying his best to finally fit in. But old habits die hard. He suddenly stands up and formally announces, "I must use the bathroom," leaving his classmates baffled. Later, he stops another student in the cafeteria, regally demanding the boy leave his food tray with him as Soa cringes. During self-study, the only sounds are the quiet scratch and scribble of pens on paper. Soa glances up from her work, her attention caught by something behind her. She spots Hiris starting to doze off, his head swaying back and forth as he fights sleep. He turns with a few gentle taps on his desk, looking around in a sleepy haze. Soa quietly approaches and whispers, offering him a cute, pink bear-shaped pillow, much to his confusion. He takes it and dozes off again, resting on the pillow. With a gentle shove, she places the pillow in his arms, though he's still completely baffled. Hiris sits awkwardly at his desk, clutching the fluffy pink pillow like it's a foreign object. Soa smiles to herself as she gets back to her work, leaving the prince to his very comfortable, very confusing nap. Wearing her backpack, Harry's holds on to the cute pink keychain attached to it. The next day in class, Soa suddenly looks up from her notes, a bit startled. She spots Harry's completely passed out at his desk, using a pink plushie as a pillow. With a soft, "Ha!" she smiles to herself, clearly amused by the sight. A beautiful, sparkling light fills the classroom, focusing on him sleeping alone after everyone else has gone. With a gentle nudge, she tries to wake him, softly calling him, "Your Grace." He finally wakes up and listens as she stands over his desk to talk. Later, while walking and eating popsicles, he complains that she's treating him like a child. With a frustrated growl, he glares at her, but she just asks if that's not what he is, leaving him stunned. She smugly remembers she also has to clean after school because of him, and a tiny, guilty Harry's knows it's true. He scoffs, imagining how utterly lost she would be in his world. Ramiam, dressed as a confused noble lady. Getting suspicious, he asks where she's taking him, realizing this isn't the path back home. She just gives him a cryptic smile, telling him he'll see soon enough. With a final step, she stops and cheerfully announces, "Here we are." He looks up to see they're standing right in front of a police station. The golden light of the setting sun washes over the police station building. He immediately flinches in terror, recognizing the building with absolute dread. He panics, accusing her of trying to lock him in that iron cage again, but she shuts him down with a flat, "Yeah, no." She tells him to be quiet and follow as she drags him towards the entrance, much to his shock. He struggles, yelling for her to let him go, but she promises it's nothing bad, an assurance he absolutely refuses to believe. His desperate shout of "Soa!" echoes as she pulls him along. The scene pulls back, showing a quiet, peaceful overhead view of the station. In a flashback, the sound of a vroom and a terrible screech is heard as a truck commits a hit and run on Yusong.
She remembers that Yusong was possessed right after the accident, and she was too shocked to get the plate number, but realizes there must be a security camera nearby.
A look of fierce determination crosses her face. Finding that truck might just be the key to sending Hair Eyes home.
Inside, they stand before a police officer, looking on with apprehension.
The officer asks if he's the victim, and Hair Eyes calmly confirms that he was indeed hit by the vehicle.
The officer nods and, with a few quick taps on her keyboard, begins to file their report.
She informs them the report is filed, but warns that the investigation could take a while.
The scene transitions to a bright, hopeful blue sky, signaling a new day.
Back at school, students are running laps on the track during gym class. With a dash and a spring in her step, Soa pushes herself to keep up with the others. She makes one final leap just as a loud beep signals that it's time for a break. Completely out of breath, she collapses onto the bleachers with a heavy huff and pant. Suddenly, a cold water bottle gives her a little nudge on the head as a friend calls her name. It's her blue-haired friend, offering her the bottle with a smile. The coach yells that she'll never get into a PE university at this rate, and Soa can only sweat, thinking he's probably right. With a soft plop, her friend sits beside her, reminding her to focus on college applications this year. She agrees, but trails off, picturing Yuseong as a ticking time bomb she constantly has to manage. "What else did he do?" her friend asks, causing Soa to flinch at the flood of chaotic memories. She quickly deflects, claiming they've just been swamped with student assembly meetings. Her friend understands, saying it makes sense since the school festival is coming up soon. Soa forces a smile and quickly agrees, trying to play it cool. But inwardly, she admits to herself that the festival had completely slipped her mind. The narration explains that with the beginning of summer comes a big event. It was time for the school festival, the biggest event of the year. Back at the apartment, Hair Eyes pauses his window cleaning, confused about the concept of a festival. He scoffs, declaring he's attended countless royal banquets and won't help with some foolish festival. She quickly reminds him that Yuseong is class president and, according to their deal, he has to play the part. He glares at the window, clearly annoyed but unable to argue with their agreement. A defeated Hair Ice slumps over, complaining about how many things Yusong gets involved in, while Soa just laughs at his misery. He turns to Soa, still pondering the strange concept of a festival. He suddenly asks when they're visiting the dressing room, leaving Soa completely baffled. He grandly declares they'll need new formal wear, vowing to make a killer first impression for his social debut in Korea. Barely holding it together, Soa forces a smile and agrees. Inwardly, she panics, realizing Hair Ice has absolutely zero clue what a school festival is, and she's terrified of the chaos to come. Later, at the official festival meeting, Soa addresses the class, explaining that it's time for each homeroom to decide on a theme. As she asks for ideas, Hair Ice stands behind her, inwardly groaning that he never thought he'd be helping plan another banquet. He silently seethes, wishing he could just possess her and solve the problem himself. Soa, sensing his agitated state, whispers to him to just stay quiet. He flashes back to the endless, sickening banquets he endured back in Remiem. With a resolute glance at his classmates, he decides to get this over with as quickly as possible. He points to a random student and imperiously commands him to think of a theme, startling the poor kid. When the student just stammers in confusion, a chibi Hair Ice clarifies, "A theme for the festival," and the boy nervously agrees. The student suggests a creepy theme, which conjures an image of a spooky masquerade ball in Hair Ice's mind. An interesting, if strange, idea. After another student suggests a maid cafe, he recalls his own professional maids with a sparkle and dismisses all their ideas as bizarre.
Getting impatient, he points directly at Soa and demands an idea from her.
She's actually impressed, thinking that he's trying his best in his own weird way, though she questions his methods.
As the class gets to work, Harice and Soa stand at the front, overseeing the planning.
Soa quietly suggests he could try being a bit nicer, gently reminding him this isn't a meeting of nobles.
He's completely baffled, arguing he was being merciful since he didn't sever anyone's tongue, which makes her wonder what medieval nightmare he crawled out of. Suddenly, the door slams open, and a girl with a ponytail jumps into the room, screaming Soa's name. The girl looks absolutely frantic as she bursts in. She finishes her thought, demanding to know who she's supposed to spar with now. A caption introduces her as Gayong, Soa's jujitsu friend. Soa nervously greets Gayong while Harice looks on, completely lost. Gayong freezes, her eyes wide with shock. With a determined step and stride, she marches over to them, demanding to know why they're standing so close together. She gets right up to Harice and gives him a fierce glare, while he just notes how tiny she is. Gayong grills Soa, asking if she got a boyfriend, and Soa frantically denies they're dating. Soa quickly explains they were just discussing the festival, and Gayong calms down, realizing he's the popular class president. Gayong quickly forgets her suspicion and clings to Soa, complaining about how boring the studio is without her. She's been waiting for her for ages. With a sharp point, she turns on Harice, warning him not to abuse his power and overwork Soa. She then threatens him, declaring he's toast if Soa is ever too busy to spar with her, leaving Harice utterly dumbfounded. Harice finally snaps, ready to put this tiny thing in her place, but Soa instantly jumps between them to block the fight. Soa quickly promises Gayong they'll spar this week, while Harice fumes in the background, insulted at being called tiny thing. As Soa drags him away, Harice insists he has unfinished business with the insolent girl, while Soa just begs him not to start a fight. Left alone, Gayong tusks, thinking he's a total weirdo. With a series of quick steps, they walk down the hall. Soa suddenly pauses, still holding his hand, and he looks at her, confused. She turns on him, her eyes welling with tears as she flinches, begging him to stop picking fights with every single person he meets. He looks away, flustered, trying to argue that the girl should have shown some manners. Her response is a cold, hard glare. Under her intense gaze, he falls silent, clearly intimidated. Soa sighs in exasperation, telling Harice how much he stresses her out. Deciding to avoid another run-in with Gayong, she turns and says they shouldn't go back to class just yet. She then flashes a bright smile, offering to give him a tour of the school instead. From a balcony above, a group of 3 girls, including the red-haired girl, spot them down below. The girls look down from the railing, their attention caught by the pair in the courtyard. The red-haired girl watches Soa and Harice walking together, a look of surprise on her face. She sees Soa animatedly pointing things out to Harice as they stroll through the school grounds. Her expression darkens with shock and disbelief as she mutters, "What the?" The scene ends on a peaceful shot of the school building against a bright blue sky. As Soa chats with Harice, a soft schwa of wind blows, and in the background, a red-haired boy carries a large blue bin. Someone off-screen calls out to the red-haired boy, asking him what he's looking at. He snaps out of it with a smile, saying it's nothing and that he's coming. Soa narrates that while she was busy helping Harice adjust, new problems were already starting to brew. Later, Soa finds herself at another student assembly meeting, once again filling in for Harice, to discuss the festival booth themes. The meeting buzzes with chatter as class representatives discuss their plans.
Soa announces her class is doing a snack bar, but the red-haired girl immediately dismisses it as a boring idea. The narration introduces the girl as Hyman Beck, ominously stating that this is where all the trouble began.
Soa argues the familiarity of a snack bar is precisely why it will be popular, but Hyman just scoffs at her.
When Soa suggests an opening performance by the drama club, Hyman immediately objects, demanding to know if they've even cleared it with them.
Soa tries to push her idea, but Hyman shuts her down again, flatly stating she disagrees.
The tension is thick as Soa looks stressed while a smug Hyman glares back, ready for a fight. It dawns on Soa with a grimace. Hyman is definitely doing this on purpose.
With a weary slump, Soa sighs that she didn't realize the meeting would be so draining, just as a voice calls out to her.
It's Hyman, asking if Yusong is still sick, catching Soa completely off guard. Soa stammers, struggling to find the right words to answer.
Hyman presses her, asking why a sick Yusong has been seen walking around everywhere with Soa, who freezes in shock.
With a deliberate bump of her shoulder, Hyman warns Soa to watch herself, telling her she's out of line. Later, Soa sits alone, realizing Hyman must have seen her and Hirais together, which explains the hostility during the meeting. She admits it makes sense for Hyman to be mad that her crush is suddenly hanging out with another girl, but wonders if she can really be blamed for it.
After a loud beep, the PE coach tells everyone to grab a badminton racket and partner up.
Hirais stares at the badminton racket in his hand, looking completely baffled by the strange object. With a sudden snap, he accidentally breaks the racket, shocking both himself and Soa with his hidden strength. Panicking, Soa realizes she can't leave him unsupervised for a second and sprints after him, yelling Yusong's name. Her blue-haired friend, Jian, thinks about partnering up and starts to call out to Soa. But she pauses when she sees Soa already with Hirais, seemingly giving him an earful. Another girl quickly asks Jian to be her partner, claiming her skills will guarantee they pass the evaluation. While playing, Soa remembers the police saying the truck investigation could take a while. She hits the shuttlecock with a swing, deciding they need to find another way to send Hirais home. Hirais returns the shot with a powerful smack, casually suggesting he just get hit by another truck, causing Soa to scream that he'll kill Yusong. As the shuttlecock bounces back, Soa suggests trying a possession method from one of her romance novels. With an effortless tap, Hirais sends the shuttlecock flying back. Soa cries out as she misses the shot, her desperate swing hitting nothing but air. Hirais unleashes another powerful smack, sending the shuttlecock rocketing across the court. The shuttlecock lands with a soft thud just past her feet, leaving Soa stunned by his unexpected skill. She asks him how he's so good at badminton, thinking to herself that Yusong was never this athletic. After a brief pause, Hirais coolly states that this is nothing special for a swordmaster. He springs into action, leaving Soa speechless. "You're a swordmaster?" she asks, as he calmly reminds her he's still himself, even in this fragile body. When she asks if he can cut rocks, he confirms it, adding that he can cut up monsters as well. The reality of his situation finally hits her, and she compares him to Bruce Lee, a name that leaves him completely clueless. She calls out his name, and with a ready swing of his racket, he asks what she wants. With a gentle tap, she stops his racket with her own, a brilliant idea forming behind her smile. Their next stop is a bustling local restaurant, where she plans to continue his cultural education. Soa excitedly rattles off menu items, while a bewildered Hirais tells her to order whatever she wants since it's all alien to him. He questions why they're eating again, but she waves it off as a light snack and proceeds to order one of everything for them.
She cheerfully raises her hand to get the server's attention.
A sweet song starts playing in the restaurant, and Soa immediately recognizes it as her favorite. Hirai's listens to the pop music, the lyrics floating around him as he takes in the new sound.
Soa softly hums along, lost in the melody.
Hirai's watches her, thinking to himself that this is a far cry from the operas he's used to. Soa sits at a table with a sweet smile, a musical note floating beside her as she rests her chin on her hand.
She and Hirai are sitting across from each other at a small diner table, ready to eat. With a puff of steam, a delicious-looking plate of jukbokki is served. Soa's face lights up with pure joy as she exclaims how good the food looks. Hirai, however, seems completely unimpressed, staring blankly ahead. They both stare at the spread of food on the table, their expressions worlds apart.
Hirai correctly guesses that the crimson-colored dish must be fiery hot, leaving Soa to wonder how he knew.
She laughs, impressed he caught on so fast, and reassures him that's why she ordered other dishes too. She presents a bowl of fish cakes and a plate of sundae, promising they aren't spicy at all. With a raise, Hirai picks up a piece of the sundae with his fork, finding the black food very peculiar.
Nam. He takes a bite while Soa eagerly asks him what he thinks.
He admits it tastes better than it looks, finding it quite savory, much to her delight. While they're both enjoying the food, she decides to drop a bomb. It's made from boiled pig blood.
He freezes instantly, fork still in hand, his eyes wide with shock. Soa, now with cute little cat ears, can't help but laugh at his reaction. Pearl, Hirai reels back in disgust, declaring he'll never eat her evil dishes again, while she teases him for liking it just a moment ago. With a furious glare, he clutches a napkin to his mouth, absolutely mortified.
Soa offers him the fish cakes, promising they're just fish, and he gives her a suspicious glare.
He cautiously takes a bite of a fish cake as she apologizes, still amused by his dramatic reaction. Her expression softens as she changes the subject, wanting to discuss how to send him back to his world.
While he eats, he explains that it's important for him to understand her world to find any clues.
Soa gets serious, asking him to tell her about his life back in Remium. He pauses, the fish cake skewer halfway to his mouth, lost in thought. A single thought echoes in his mind: my duty. A flashback begins, showing Hirai in a formal uniform, explaining his duty was to eliminate monsters and rebels. The scene darkens, focusing on the flowing red cape of his uniform. He reveals he's from House Licariel, one of the founding families, known as war heroes with deep ties to the imperial family. In short, they were a high-ranking noble family with an insane amount of money and power. A portrait of a young Hirai hangs on a wall as he explains he was born as the family's only heir. With a sudden grab, the memory turns violent as a hand covers his mouth and he's pinned down on his bed. He struggles, his eyes wide with terror as he's held down. Whoosh! A masked assassin looms over him, raising a dagger to strike. Clench. He desperately tries to fight back, his muffled struggles filling the room. Slash. A spray of blood splatters across the scene. A guard stands over the fallen assassin as young Hirai sits up in bed, looking absolutely terrified.
Shiver. He realizes he could have died, explaining that being the heir meant accumulating countless enemies. With a step and a stride, someone approaches his room.
Slam! The door bursts open, and his father stands there, angrily asking if it's another assassin. Servants dash into the room, calling out to their master and Lord Hirais.
With a squeeze, his nanny rushes to his side, frantically asking if he's all right. He tries to reassure his crying nanny that he's fine, looking shaken but trying to stay strong. With a flinch, he hears his father's cold voice calling it shameful that he needed a knight to squash a bug in his room. He pauses, looking wounded.
Tsk. With a dismissive nudge of his foot, his father kicks the dead assassin, declaring that he sullies the name of House Lecariel. As he walks away, his father icily tells him to improve himself if he wants to keep his head.
His nanny looks at him with worried eyes, calling his name softly.
Clench. Little Hirais grips the bedsheets, a new resolve hardening in his eyes. He had to become stronger in order to survive. The memory fades into a shower of white particles. With a powerful kick, the memory of his past resolve takes shape.
He stands triumphantly with his boot on a defeated opponent's back, a sword in his hand, having become a sword master.
Back in the present, Hirais glances sideways, the weight of his past still evident in his hardened expression. The memory fades into a shower of white particles. End of chapter 1.
A flashback begins, showing a powerful, faceless man in a regal purple suit sitting on a throne, flanked by guards. The man lets out a smug grin, his posture radiating arrogance and authority.
After many years pass, the man, now with a face, kindly pats the head of a young boy while conversing with other nobles.
In a grand hall, the man presides over a table of young boys, teaching them from an ancient scroll.
Years later, the boy, now a young man named Hirais, attends a party, but a sudden pause reveals his grim realization. His wine has been poisoned.
With a loud shatter, he smashes the glass, thinking how foolish his enemies are. In another memory, a 17-year-old Hirais slams down a budget sheet in fury, as a terrified attendant identifies him as Duke Lecariel.
Hirais bites the end of a quill, lost in thought as he works tirelessly at his desk.
A king on a golden throne announces that with the passing of the previous duke, Hirais de Lecariel will now inherit the title. Hirais kneels before the throne, formally accepting his new, heavy responsibility.
The narration explains his sacred duty is to protect the empire from all monsters and rebellious forces.
Back in the present, Hirais, still in Yusong's body, stares blankly at a fish cake skewer, completely out of his element.
Soa watches him, realizing his life story sounds exactly like one of the fantasy novels she reads. It dawns on her that imagining Hirais actually living through such a harsh reality is heartbreaking.
She tells him his life must have been incredibly difficult. He dismisses her sympathy, coolly stating that it wasn't hard. It was simply his way of life.
Soa probes further, asking if there are still people in his world who want to harm him.
She asks if he can think of anyone who might have caused his soul to switch bodies, but he just stares back in silence.
Hirais casually lists an insane number of enemies, leaving Soa speechless as she asks if he came from an apocalypse.
When asked what he was doing before he arrived, he recalls he was simply about to enter his bath.
He remembers, however, that the bathwater had a very strange and unusual smell.
Soa nervously asks if he died,
but he clarifies that he simply lost consciousness after noticing the scent. She decides their first priority should be to figure out what happened to his original body. He agrees, suggesting they start by identifying the mysterious scent he smelled. With a quick shove, Soa hands him a transit card she just loaded up for him. He asks what it is, and she explains it's for public vehicles, a modern carriage fee. She beams, clearly enjoying her role as his guide to the modern world. Soa tells him she's heading off and that he should be able to find his way home from here. He seems a little lost, asking if she's not coming with him, but she says she has other plans. Waving a cheerful goodbye, she tells him to be careful and that she'll see him tomorrow. Hirai stands alone, watching her walk away. He glances to the side, a thoughtful expression on his face. As he looks up at the sky, he realizes this is the first time in his life he's ever shared his story with anyone. Meanwhile, Soa arrives at a martial arts studio where her friends greet her with surprise. A girl with her hair tied back grins happily, calling out Soa's name. Soa apologizes for her absence, and her friend chides her for not coming more often. The friend, Gayong, grabs Soa, eager to spar and vowing to make her tap out, while Soa just asks for a minute to get changed.
One of the boys explains to a newcomer that Soa is a prodigy.
With a powerful slam, Soa effortlessly throws her opponent, proving he was right. She's a sports prodigy. The new guy just stares, completely stunned by her incredible skill. Later that night, Hirai sleeps restlessly in Yusong's bed. He's clearly trapped in a nightmare, sweating as dark memories surface. In his dream, a young Hirai calls out for his nanny and begins to sprint down a long, dark corridor. He spots her at the end of the hall and calls out to her again, relieved. Running up to her, he happily asks where she's been, saying he was looking all over.
As she begins to turn, his smile fades into confusion.
A sudden, brutal stab. His trusted nanny has plunged a dagger deep into his chest. He looks down in horror and disbelief at the blade protruding from his pajamas. Staring up at his nanny's twisted, evil grin, he realizes the ultimate betrayal as his world shatters. With a guttural scream, Hirai jolts awake in bed, gasping for air as the horrifying memory fades.
Yusung awakens with a cold sweat, his face pale with worry.
He sits alone on his bed, the weight of the previous day's confession settling heavily upon him. The memories bubble up, filling his mind with a disorienting haze. He regrets everything, thinking he shouldn't have told her about his world. Now, in a class meeting, he believes that if he'd stayed quiet, he wouldn't have had that painful dream. A girl asks for volunteers to advertise their booth.
He silently reflects that he never meant to tell her so much about himself.
He recalls Soa's gentle smile as she listened to his story. He remembers her holding her chopsticks, her expression warm and understanding. Clam, snapping back to reality, he's flustered when someone calls out, "Yusong." He wonders if it's easier to talk to her because she doesn't really know him. Grab, Soa suddenly gets his attention, and he nervously asks what she wants. A little crown appears over his head, signifying his noble status. She happily reports that Soeun and Minsu are handling advertising and asks him to write it down, to which he agrees. As he heads to the chalkboard, he thinks of Soa and how, despite knowing his dark past, she still treats him exactly the same. A cute doodle shows him looking bored in class with a pink creature on his desk. After the meeting, Yusong tells the class, "Good work, let us pack up." But Soa tells him to hold on, saying she needs to wash her rag first.
Splash. As she washes the rag, she thinks she's starting to see Harry's in a new light, especially after what he told her yesterday.
She nervously wrings out the cloth, her mind racing. She used to think of him as some evil spirit in Yusong's body, but now that she knows his past, her perspective softens as she pictures a lonely, sad Harry's.
It suddenly hits her, a vision of her past self comforting him. Ugh, she panics, thinking she never meant to get to know him so personally, and wondering why he opened up so easily. She would never have wanted to know his story if she knew it would make her sympathize with him.
Lost in her thoughts, she remains silent for a moment.
Step. With the wet rag dripping, she thinks, what if he's growing on me?
Slip! Her thought is cut short as she loses her footing on the wet floor.
Oh no! She braces for impact as she falls backward. Grab! But a strong hand catches her just in time as a boy with reddish-brown hair tells her to watch out.
Oh, she looks up, stunned and blushing. She stares at her savior, wondering who he is. He tells her she could have fallen, and she lets out a silent gasp of shock. Stammer. Pulling away, she nervously thanks him for saving her and asks if he's okay. He says he thinks so. Laughing with relief, she thanks him again for saving her from a faceplant, but he cuts her off by saying her name, Soa. Just then, Harris appears in the hallway, his backpack on, looking right at them. From across the hall, he watches their interaction, a question mark appearing over his head as Soa notices him.
Soa awkwardly waves goodbye to the boy who saved her, saying she'll see him around. He replies, sure.
She then walks back toward Hirice, who waits for her in the otherwise empty school corridor. The boy with reddish-brown hair watches them go, a gentle smile on his face. The scene transitions to the warm glow of a setting sun. Outside the school, a girl with long red hair waits against a wall. A memory surfaces of a hand reaching out, calling the name Heyman. Grab. In a flashback, the original Yusong takes Hyman's hand, looking nervous but determined. With a hopeful smile, he asks her, "Can we walk back home together?" Another flashback shows Soa and Hirice walking side by side. Back in the present, Hyman looks down, heartbroken, realizing he didn't show up. Turn. She gives up waiting and walks away. Again. In the distance, she sees Hirice and Soa walking away from the school gates together. The scene shifts to a bright and sunny weekend morning. Soa waits at a bus stop, smiling as she looks over her shoulder. Hirice arrives, looking gaunt and exhausted, thinking they were supposed to be resting today since there's no school. Here is questions why Soe summoned him at this ungodly hour, looking over her frantic, misspelled texts. With a relieved plop, Soe crashes onto her bed, excited for a relaxing weekend. She smiles, thinking that with Hirice adopting well, all she needs to do is figure out how to send him home. With a sudden gasp, she jolts up in bed, remembering the roles for the school festival. In a flashback, the teacher asks the student representatives to buy booth materials with her credit card, and Soe agrees. She recalls telling Hirice that they'd be doing a lot of moving around, so he'd need her help. Back in the present, she lets out a groan, face-palming in frustration. She can't believe she completely forgot about her duty to buy all the festival supplies. At the bus stop, she explains their errand to a bewildered Hirice who doesn't understand why they have to do it. He finds the task beneath him, comparing it to a duke serving drinks. But Soe clarifies it's only for student reps. He asks why on earth she would agree to such a role, and she just sweats nervously.
A flashback shows the teacher asking for volunteers to be a student representative. The teacher expresses concern that it will be too much work for Yusong alone, though he insists he'll be fine.
Just then, Soe hesitantly raises her hand, catching the teacher's attention.
With a comically strained smile, she volunteers to be the vice president.
Back in the present, she lies, claiming she loves this kind of work, while vowing to never tell him she did it for Yusong. Desperate to change the subject, she points out their bus has finally arrived.
On board, Hirice looks around in awe, remarking on the massive carriage.
Soa casts a thoughtful glance over at him. She muses that it's been a long time since she rode a bus with Yusong, even if this isn't really him.
A sweet memory flashes by of her and a young Yusong happily riding the bus together as kids.
She stares at his profile, wondering if she and the real Yusong would be sitting together like this, if his body wasn't possessed. Her intense stare finally makes him turn around, confused.
He calls out her name, and with a jump, she snapped back to reality.
Completely flustered, she quickly stammers that it's nothing. She turns away, too embarrassed to look at him. The two sit together in a quiet, slightly awkward moment. Soa stares ahead, lost in her complicated feelings. Hirice has a sudden realization. She must have been looking at Yusong through him. With a soft vroom, the bus drives on. They finally arrive at their stop, and Soa announces that they're here. She tells him their first destination is a grocery store and pulls out her phone for directions. Yusong peers over her shoulder. He goes suddenly silent, his attention completely captured by something across the street.
Soa notices his distraction and asks what he's looking at.
His eyes are glued to a Sunny Chicken Skewers food truck. The cheerful food truck advertises its tasty-looking skewers. Soe gives a knowing smile, figuring out exactly what's on his mind. A steaming hot chicken skewer is presented, looking absolutely delicious. Hirice insists they didn't need to stop, but Soe says she wanted some and takes a big nom. He just stares at the skewer, examining the strange food with intense curiosity. He surprises Soa by mentioning he's seen similar foods back in his world of Ramim. She asks if he likes street food, but as he takes a cautious chew, he admits he's never tried it before. His expression softens into a look of pleasant surprise. This duke is officially a fan. Soa is stunned, realizing he's never had such a simple pleasure in his life. They stand together in front of the truck, a new experience shared between them. Inspired, Soa declares that this means they have to try a bunch of other street foods, and excitedly leads the way. A cute chibi art card shows Soa ready for her scholastic and culinary adventures. The impromptu food tour continues with hot dogs, which Hirice eyes with slight apprehension. Soa happily moves on to the next snack, some kind of pastry on a stick. When she suggests sundae, Hirice flatly refuses, earning a playful jab from Soa for being picky.
The vendor puts on a show as the grill erupts in a dramatic flare, wowing both Soa and Hirice.
Next up is a caramel macchiato, and Hirice is baffled by the concept of putting caramel inside coffee.
With a quick slurp, his eyes sparkle with delight.
Finally, at the grocery store, Soa grunts as she lifts a heavy box of chili paste while listing off their shopping needs. Hirice makes a special request for lots of fish cakes, and with a pour, he empties several bags into the basket.
With a loud groan, Soa struggles with the now heavy basket, deciding delivery is definitely the way to go.
A hand suddenly reaches for the handle of her basket. Hirice effortlessly lifts the heavy basket, asking a stunned Soa what they need to buy next.
Flustered, she stammers her thanks and points toward the decorations,
thinking he nearly gave her a heart attack. Soa holds up a colorful string of party flags for them to consider. A moment later, she's wrapped an unimpressed Hirais in the flags, clapping happily at her handiwork. The scene shifts to a sparkling display of handmade bracelets and rings. Soa's eyes widen as she stares at the beautiful accessories. Hirais asks if she likes them, and she eagerly confirms her love for handmade jewelry. She explains that knowing someone made them by hand makes them feel more special. He silently reflects that he thought that was the norm for all goods, as she asks the clerk for a price. A delicate new bracelet now sparkles on her wrist.
Leaving the store, Soa celebrates their productive day, while Hirais scoffs, thinking her little bracelet is nothing compared to the treasures in his estate. Soa suddenly suggests they stop at a beauty store, determined to find the scent Hirais smelled in the bath. Inside, she has him smell a pink, heart-shaped bottle of perfume. He sniffs it and confirms it's not the one he remembers. A store employee apologetically informs them that they only carry flower-scented perfumes. Soa suggests they check the other scents anyway, and Hirais nods in agreement. As she sprays a different perfume, she suddenly pauses. She recognizes that scent. A memory surfaces of a younger Soa and Yusong, who is proudly holding the very same perfume. The young, smiling Yusong seems very fond of the bottle. In the memory, a young Soa says she wants to use it too, and Yusong sweetly agrees it would suit her. Back in the present, Hirais notices her expression and asks if she knows the perfume. With a click of the perfume cap, she explains that it used to be Yusong's mother's favorite. Hirais innocently suggests she could buy it as a gift for her. Soa sadly tells him that's not possible because Yusong's mother is gone, causing Hirais to flinch. A heavy silence falls over them as they stand at the perfume counter. The automatic doors slide open as they leave the store empty-handed.
The mood is incredibly awkward as they exit, but Hirais assures her they'll find the scent somewhere else. He looks on with concern while she forces a smile. They walk down the street in a somber, quiet moment. But Soa's mood instantly lifts when she spots a claw machine full of plushies.
She asks if he wants to try, already picturing the stoic Duke cuddling a stuffed animal in his sleep.
A determined Soa takes control of the machine's claw,
And with a triumphant drop, she successfully snags a tiny prize.
clearing her throat, she proudly presents her winnings to him. With a disgusted snort, he declares he has no interest in such childish things. Soa calls his bluff, asking why he still carries the pillow she gave him. Flustered, he insists that's different and tries to give the keychain back. Too late, the cute little charm now dangles from his bag.
At the bus stop, he complains about the foolish keychain, while Soa reassures him it looks great. Her eyes widen as she checks the bus schedule and sees theirs is about to arrive. She frantically takes a huge nom of her ice pop to finish it, shocking Hirais, who can't believe she ate the freezing thing so fast. With a vroom, the bus takes off, leaving Soa exhausted, and Hirais clutching his head from a massive brain freeze.
He complains that his teeth are still frozen, baffled at how she managed to swallow the entire thing whole.
Soa turns back to a nervous Hirais and asks him what he thought of their day out. He admits that while he didn't dislike the new foods and found the street entertainment intriguing, he still doesn't understand the point of their errand. She happily suggests they visit internet cafes and movie theaters next time, but he bluntly replies he'd rather focus on finding a way back to Remium. His serious response catches her completely off guard. As the bus stops, a beep sounds as an elderly couple boards. With a quick rise, Soa immediately offers her seat to the woman, who gratefully accepts. The woman tells her husband to sit, but he just stares ahead in wide-eyed shock. Frozen in place, the elderly man is speechless, a bead of sweat running down his face. He stammers, Looking nervously, following Soa's lead, Harry's takes a step forward and offers his own seat to the man, who thanks the kind young man. Now both standing, they hold the handrails as the bus begins to rattle. Hirais looks on with a quiet, contemplative expression. A flashback replays the moment Soa gave up her seat. His mind drifts to Remium, where elders bowed before him. Realizing he's never once shown them as the bus sways, Soa nearly loses her balance, and Harry's gives a subtle nod. In a surprising act of kindness, he reaches over and takes her heavy shopping bag from her hand. He holds the bag for her, lightening her burden without a word.
They stand together in the rattling bus, sharing a quiet, unspoken moment. The scene changes to a winded Soa, who stops her run and gasps that she needs a break. A man's voice calls her name as his large sneakers step into view, stopping her in her tracks.
She turns around, surprised to see her coach, Coach Park.
With a feeling of doom, she listens as he tells her she's been slacking off a lot lately. She bows her head, nervously trying to deny it. The coach sternly reminds her that her only focus should be on the upcoming college entrance exams. She apologizes, explaining that she's been busy preparing for the school festival. In a flash of memory, both a purple-haired girl and her coach insist she must focus on college applications above all else. Soa sadly reflects that she didn't realize how much she'd changed, when suddenly, a hand reaches out to her.
In a warm memory, Hirais wraps his arms around her in a gentle back hug.
Back in the present, the coach gives her a supportive pat on the shoulder, reminding her that talent isn't a substitute for hard work.
A girl with long purple hair watches them from a distance, looking slightly concerned. Elsewhere, a hand furiously stabs a pink bear-like plushie with a pen over and over. A faded memory shows Soa and Hirais standing together as the bus sways. He recalls the moment they looked at each other on the bus. With a soft click, he also remembers her telling him about Yusung's mother's favorite perfume. In the classroom, Hirais continues to idly stab the pillow, wondering what kind of relationship Soa and Yusung truly shared.
He concludes they couldn't have been just friends, questioning why else she would care so deeply for him.
A sudden laugh snaps him out of his thoughts as Soa and the purple-haired girl enter the classroom.
The purple-haired girl asks Soa if she's back from training, while Soa cheerfully greets Yusung. Her coach's stern words echo in her mind, causing her to pause mid-sentence.
She tightens her fist, resolving to endure this just until Hirais returns to Remium.
With a couple of steps, she enters the classroom, complaining about how hot it is outside.
The purple-haired girl watches quietly as Soa walks over to Hirais' desk. With a confident stride, Soa makes her way across the classroom floor.
She holds up the pink pillow, demanding to know why he doesn't have the matching keychain, and accusing him of stabbing it, but he just looks confused, asking if he was supposed to bring it.
They playfully bicker, with Soa insisting they're a collection, and Hirais retorting that it means nothing to him. The purple-haired girl watches their exchange, her expression thoughtful and curious. She wonders how they suddenly became best friends, recalling how different things were just a few weeks ago. In a flashback, the real Yusung walks past Soa and the purple-haired girl without a word, causing them to pause. The memory continues as Yusung warmly greets Soa, asking where she's going before the bell rings. He surprises her by offering his soda, knowing it's her favorite, but she jumps back, flustered, insisting she'll get her own. In a flashback, Soa cheerfully offers a drink to the real Yusung, and with a dash tells him they should go with Jiyeon. The memory is tinged with awkwardness as Yusung looks away, revealing that he and Jiyeon weren't actually good friends. Back in the present, Jiyeon mutters to herself when another girl suddenly leans in, making her jump. The girl whispers that Soa has been acting weird lately, skipping jujitsu to hang out with Yusong like they're besties. Jiyeon notes that Soa originally went to jujitsu to get closer to Yusong when he used to attend classes.
The girl asks if it's because he's hot, but Soa thinks to herself that he's actually too nice for her type. Convinced something is going on between them, the girl eagerly asks a hesitant Jiyeon to help her investigate.
Jiyeon's eyes well up with tears as she silently wonders if something is wrong.
With a sharp tap on the podium, a teacher gets the classroom's attention.
The teacher announces an end-of-day meeting while Soa playfully sticks a note on a preoccupied Harisee's cheek.
Hirice asks what a club is as he rips the note off his face, but Soa just smiles and tells him to come on.
With a steady step, the two of them walk down the school hallway together. Hirice asks if they're in the same club, but Soa clarifies that she's just dropping him off at his club room before she heads to track practice.
When he asks which club he's in, she beams and tells him that Yusong is in the theater club. She gushes that with his looks, he has the perfect face for theater, leaving a sparkly but very confused Hirice in her wake.
He gets a sudden shiver down his spine and defensively declares that he's never done such a thing. Hirice insists he'd rather go running in the sun, but Soa just laughs, saying it's too late to change clubs now.
As they walk, she tries to reassure him, suggesting he can just stay quiet so he doesn't have to do anything too visible.
She then cheekily adds that the only problem is that his face will always be visible, much to his annoyance as he questions the point of this whole endeavor.
She explains that the real Yusong liked acting because it made him feel like he could be a different person, which gives Harius pause.
Soe recalls how Yusong's acting always won prizes for their class, prompting Harius to ask how she knows him so well.
With a nervous jump, she stammers that it's obviously because they're childhood friends, but he eyes her skeptically, asking if that's really all.
He presses further, saying he finds it hard to believe they were just friends when she cares for him so much, causing her to flinch. Taking a step closer, he looks her in the eye and asks point blank if they were lovers.
Leaning in, he wonders if it was unrequited love, but Soe looks away, asking who he's talking about as she slides away.
Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a girl with long reddish-brown hair.
With a radiant beam, the new girl asks Yusong why he's just standing there and invites him to come in. Soe quickly makes her exit, turning to leave for track practice, while the new girl grabs Harius's arm.
As Soe walks away, the reddish-brown-haired girl shoots her a cold glare.
A nervous Soe admits to herself that she does not like this situation one bit. The scene shifts to the track, where Soe and her teammates are in their starting positions for a sprint. With a sharp beep, the coach calls for the second group, and Soe steals her resolve.
Walking past the bleachers, Soe realizes that the new girl, Haimin, is also in the theater club and that she keeps running into her because she's always with Harius.
She winces, remembering Haimin's icy glare and worrying that she's only made the girl hate her more. But she decides it might be for the best, figuring Harius won't act out as much with Haimin around to take care of him.
She can't help but chuckle at the absurd image of Harius acting in a play, thinking it's as likely as a tiger becoming a vegetarian.
With a quiet plop, she sits on the bleachers and pauses, thinking about the heroes she knows who would never do such a thing. Her mind flashes back to the intense moment when Hirice leaned in to question her feelings for Yusong. She wonders why he asked her that, questioning if she was being too obvious about her past.
She realizes with a jolt that she never considered her actions might seem suspicious to him. With a heavy sigh, she decides to distance herself from him, confident he's adjusted enough to be fine on his own. Suddenly, a loud slam breaks the quiet as someone shouts her name, shocking both her and Hirice.
A frantic Hirais appears before her, grabbing her attention and telling her to come with him because it's urgent. He bursts out of a nearby door, rushing toward a completely baffled So-ae, who is still sitting on the steps. A voice calls out So-ae's name again, catching the attention of both a shocked So-ae and Hirais. Hirais runs out of the building toward a confused So-ae, who is still seated on the ground. So-ae is completely lost, her expression blank with utter confusion. With a dramatic done, Hyman and another girl look on in shock at the unfolding scene. A brilliant do-done sounds as Hirais grins confidently, announcing that So-ae will be the stand-in. Bam! So-ae, still in her gym clothes, stands awkwardly beside Hirais, both of them facing two very surprised-looking club members. The two girls can only stare, wondering what on earth is going on. At the theater club meeting, a boy with glasses and folded arms calls out So-ae's name, as other members chatter and giggle in the background.
The bespectacled boy wonders if So-ae was actually romantically involved with Yu-sung.
He watches her from across the theater club meeting, noting how uncharacteristically shocked she seemed.
Hirais reflects that So-ae has been looking after Yu-sung far more than a simple friend would, despite her actions having nothing to do with him possessing the body.
He stands back to back with a memory of So-ae, a symbolic divide between their true selves and their current situation.
Amid the club's bustle and chatter, Hirais decides it's none of his business whether they were lovers or not.
Ta-da! A girl with a pinkish bun enthusiastically presents a couple of scripts to the group. The boy with glasses announces that they'll be performing right before the closing ceremony and need to choose a play accordingly.
With a graceful slide, the girl lays out several scripts on the table for everyone to consider.
As the members chatter and murmur about play ideas, Hirais just wants to blend into the background, resolving to pretend he doesn't exist. A blonde girl cuts in, insisting they should pick their lead actor first and then find a play to match, adding that the choice is obvious. All eyes turn to a nervous Hirais, who can only stammer, "What?"
The others agree it makes perfect sense, leaving a panicked Hirais to protest as they all assume he's the lead. He lets out a defiant yell, declaring he won't do it, which stuns the other members into silence. The club members crowd around him, arguing that a handsome lead is essential and his face is the foundation of this club, but he refuses to be their entertainer.
Trying a different tactic, a boy with brown hair leans in, offering to let Yu-sung pick any play he wants, but Hirais is still not having it. His eyes land on a script titled The Swordmaster Duke, featuring an imposing military figure.
The other boys grab the script and huddle around him as Hirais stares at the cover, thoughtfully starting to fidget. A mischievous grin spreads across his face as he holds up the Swordmaster Duke script, having made his decision. His choice leaves the other two members speechless, wondering why he'd pick a historical romance fantasy. The scene shifts to a sign taped to a door, declaring only theater club members allowed. The club members murmur and chatter, realizing the play requires a sword dance, but no one knows how to use a sword. The guy who found the script whispers an apology. A boy asks Haimin if she knows how to use a sword, since she's the female lead, but she nervously denies it, leading to the conclusion that they'll need a stand-in. The boy and the blonde girl exchange worried glances, stumped on who could possibly do it. They ask Hirais if another script caught his eye, since this one is too difficult without a stand-in, but he just asks what a stand-in is. They look confused.
A memory flashes in his mind, a powerful smack as So-ah effortlessly takes down an opponent in a jiu-jitsu match. A confident smile lights up his face as a plan begins to form. He announces that he has the perfect candidate in mind, someone who can use a sword. His cryptic statement leaves Haimin and the others completely bewildered. He drops the bomb. So-ah will be the stand-in for the sword dancing part of the play. A shimmering sha effect surrounds So-ah and Hirais as they stand before the club, whose members immediately start to whisper and murmur, asking who this girl is. Hirais smugly crosses his arms, confidently declaring that the matter is settled since she can use a sword. So-ah furiously whispers to him, insisting she can't use a sword, and freaking out over being forced into a sword dance. He just smirks, tells her he knows she can do it, and turns to grab a wooden practice sword for her, leaving her utterly confused. With a quick toss, he throws the sword at her, and she catches it on instinct, looking stunned. Sweating and fidgeting, she nervously holds the sword, begging for this to be a joke. Hirais flashes a wicked grin, challenging her with the sword he's holding. With a sudden leap, he lunges at her, forcing a shocked So-ah to tell him to knock it off. She flinches back as their wooden swords meet with a loud clash. So-ah looks up at him, wide-eyed and sweating with disbelief. Hirais, on the other hand, is clearly enjoying himself, a playful smile on his face. The wooden sword creaks in her trembling hands as a headache begins to throb. She can't believe she managed to block his attack instinctively. With a sharp whoosh, he swings at her again as she tries to call out his name. Crack! His sword hits hers again, and all she can think is, again? The other club members watch in horror as Hirais relentlessly attacks with a swing, clash, whoosh, and stab. So-ah panics, screaming in her mind, "Why am I fighting an actual sword master right now?" Huff, huff. She realizes he's serious enough to crack her head open and that she has to stop him now. As another strike crashes against her block, she desperately tells herself to think. An idea sparks as she wonders how sword fighters do it in historical TV shows. Her mind flashes to a memory of a classic duel between two swordsmen in traditional robes. A sharp clang rings out as their steel blades cross in her imagination. Whoosh! Inspired, she shifts her grip on the wooden sword, preparing to unleash a powerful two-handed swing of her own. With a sharp clash, Hirais grins triumphantly, clearly having the upper hand in their duel. Another loud clack sends a bead of sweat down So-ah's face as she struggles to keep up. With a final, powerful impact, one of the wooden swords splinters and breaks. Her sword clatters to the ground with a soft drop as Hirais stands over her, victorious. Huff, pant. Utterly defeated, So-ah can only admit, I lost. Hirais catches his breath with a huff, a proud and satisfied smile on his face. Their impromptu duel leaves the other theater club members completely frozen in shock. The blonde girl and two boys stare in disbelief, one of them whispering, "Wow." Suddenly, the club erupts into a cheer, shouting that the fight was as cool as a real movie scene and demanding an encore. The members swarm a bewildered So-ah, welcoming her to the theater club and declaring she's the stand-in. She awkwardly protests that she's sorry, but she never agreed to any of this. Amid the celebration, a stone-faced Hyman watches with her arms crossed, clearly not amused. Slam! A door shuts behind them, and So-ah furiously demands to know what he was thinking. Now alone in a classroom, a seething So-ah glares at a very calm-looking Hirais. She fumes, yelling that he ambushed her with a sword fight without a single word of warning. He looks down, coolly reminding her that she was the one who said she wanted to try it.
His words trigger a memory of two ancient swordsmen dueling with a resounding clang and clash of steel.
The flashback continues to them watching the movie, where Soa wished she could fight like that, prompting him to ask if she was serious.
She had gushed about how cool he was, certain he'd practiced 1,000,000 times, and begged him to teach her someday. Back in the present, a confused Soa looks on as he smiles, telling her not to worry because it will all be fine.
He lets out a soft "ha," calling her name with a knowing look.
Recalling all the times she's yelled at him, Harry's thinks with a mischievous grin that she's had her fun, and now it's his turn. He takes a confident step toward a flustered Soa, explaining how for him, a sword is like an extension of his own body. As an image of an ethereal blade appears, he clenches his fist, finishing his thought. He tells her there's nothing to be concerned about, because now she's going to learn from him. Leaning closer, he confidently promises to teach her everything she needs to know about sword dancing. The scene shifts to a tall, modern building under a starry night sky. Inside, Hyman sits alone on the edge of her bed, looking defeated. Her expression is a mixture of anger and despair as she stares into space. She flashes back to the duel and Harice's smug expression, her hand clenching around her phone in frustration. With a furious "arg," she hurls her phone across the room, where it hits the floor with a loud crack. Outside, the quiet night is filled with the gentle chirp of crickets. With a determined step, Harice approaches carrying a large stick and calls out Soa's name.
She responds with a spirited jump, ready for whatever he has planned.
With a quick toss, he throws her a practice stick, explaining they'll use these instead of real swords, just like a duke from a historical fantasy novel would. A dramatic dun sounds as she holds the stick, looking less than impressed with her new sword. She asks where he even found the stick, but he sternly tells her to focus on the lesson, to which she timidly agrees. A confident grin spreads across his face as he declares he will begin by teaching her how to properly hold a sword. Taking a step forward, he points out that he noticed her clumsy grip earlier today. With a sigh, he says she looked completely untrained, causing her to blush and argue that it's only because he attacked her without warning. He stands behind her, gently adjusting her hands on the stick to show her the correct form. Their faces are inches apart, his expression serious and hers wide-eyed with surprise. Soa's face flushes a deep red as she stammers, completely flustered by their closeness. Smack! She instinctively bonks him on the head with the stick, sending him reeling in shock. She laughs triumphantly, saying she can swing it fine now, while he clutches his head as a headache begins to throb, wondering why on earth he stood so close. Oblivious to his pain, she cheerfully asks what's next, leaving a very confused Harice to scratch his head. Their training continues with more intense sparring, their sticks meeting with a resounding clash. He demonstrates a move, explaining that after blocking an attack like this, crack, his powerful swing snaps her stick in two, sending the piece flying against the night sky. He points the broken end of his stick at her, cleanly winning the round. With a confident schwa, Harice finishes his lesson, explaining the goal is to disarm your opponent. Her heart goes badoom, as a stunned Soa can only think, wow, I don't know why, but he looks kind of cool right now, she thinks, before immediately demanding, one more time. The scene shifts to the school as an announcement rings out. The festival is fast approaching.
A girl on stage announces with a dramatic do-done that the theater club will have extra practice every day for 3 hours, much to Soa's internal horror.
As the club members chatter and head off to practice, Soa and Hirais share a laugh while walking away. With a quick dash, Hyman runs up, calling out for Yusong. She clings to his arm with a hug, asking him to practice with her since it's too hard to do alone, leaving Soa looking less than thrilled. After a brief exchange, Hyman leads Hirais away, leaving Soa to watch them go, step by step.
Wow, can't believe he just ditched me, Soa thinks, before conceding that it makes sense since they're the leads. Suddenly, a voice calls out, startling her. Soa!
Deciding to make the best of it, she turns with a cheerful smile, ready to practice by herself.
Meanwhile, Hyman delivers a line with a dramatic gasp, begging Henry not to cast her away.
Hirais gives a bored sigh, flatly agreeing it's a shame.
Hyman glares at him, insisting he doesn't mean it, but he just looks stiff and asks why she thinks that.
Frustrated by his complete lack of effort, she turns away in a huff. Elsewhere, Soa focuses on memorizing the script by herself.
She quietly wonders when she's supposed to switch with Hyman for her part.
Taking a step forward, she approaches the pair and calls out to Hyman. So asks if they know which line is her cue to step in for the sword dance. Hyman turns away, coughing and complaining that her throat is sore from yelling. Soa tries to get their attention, but they simply turn and walk off without a word. Utterly shocked, she can't believe Hyman just ignored her so rudely. She turns to Hirais, completely dumbfounded by what just happened. He just gives her a sly smile, suggesting they continue their sword dancing lessons.
Hyman looks around, confused, wondering where Yusong disappeared to.
Her eyes land on Hirais and Soa, already deep in their sword practice.
Hirais suddenly appears behind a startled Hyman, a playful smirk on his face as he holds his wooden sword. The practice leader claps, announcing that they can all go home for the day. As an exhausted Soa trembles from the intense lessons, Hyman steps up and offers to buy everyone ice cream. While the others cheer, Hyman glances over and calls out to Yusong. She invites him to get ice cream with her, leaving both him and Soa completely surprised. A hand offers 2 ice cream bars, telling the other person to take one. Soa reaches out to say thanks, but Hyman pulls the bag away with a smirk, saying, "Oops, sorry." She holds up the empty bag with a rustle, explaining she only bought enough for the actual club members. While Hyman laughs it off, Soa's anger begins to simmer and roar under her forced smile.
Her rage explodes in her imagination with a mighty slam as she takes Hyman down for being so petty.
Arg! In her daydream, Hyman tops out frantically as Soa holds her in a lock. Soa, now in a martial arts uniform, grins and suggests another round, while Hyman desperately begs for help.
The next day, a gaunt-looking Soa trudges toward the gym, already dreading theater practice. She pushes the door open, hating the situation, only to hear the sounds of laughter and chatter from inside. Soa glares at Harris, blaming him for everything, and instantly regretting ever thinking he was cool. With a ferocious inner growl, she wishes she could hit him with a sword, and then settles for a solid smack on his back as she walks past. Hyman calls out to Yusong as she sees him and Soa walking in together. Her face darkens into a scowl as she watches them approach. Harris looks confused by Soa's strange behavior, while she nervously avoids everyone's gaze. As practice begins, Soa decides her best bet is to just keep a low profile until the festival is over.
A sudden realization hits her, and she looks over with a shocked and sweaty expression.
The scene pulls back to show her all alone in the vast empty gym, left with a broom to clean up.
She goes to leave, but the doorknob begins to shake and rattle. It won't open.
As she furiously rattles the locked door, she realizes what's happened. Seething, Hyamin, you little.
With a series of frantic slams, a trapped Soa pounds on the door, desperately yelling to see if anyone can hear her.
Bang! Bang! She keeps hammering away, her face a mix of rage and panic as she screams for someone to open the door.
Outside, Yusong glances around with a concerned look, realizing he hasn't seen Soa for quite a while. The scene flashes back to 30 minutes before practice, showing a wide view of the school's massive gymnasium.
A teacher, Mr. Kim, enters the gym carrying a basket of basketballs, looking slightly startled by who he sees.
He spots Haimin and calls out a friendly greeting, noting that she's early for practice. With a thud, he sets the basket down, confirming the theater club is using the auditorium and wishing them a good session. But before she goes, he stops her with a crucial warning. Don't go into the storage room near the back door.
A sly smile crosses Hyman's face as she promises to warn the other kids, secretly thinking she doesn't want anyone getting locked in there. Back in the present, the gym is alive with the bustle and chatter of the practice session. Hyman watches from afar as Yusong tells Soa to tighten her grip, joking that she'll be assassinated otherwise.
With a deceptively sweet smile, Haimin approaches the pair and calls out Soa's name. She asks to borrow Yusong for a moment so they can practice their lines together. As Haimin thanks Soa and leads Yusong away, he grumbles that he can walk just fine on his own.
Soa is completely baffled, wondering why Haimin is being so nice all of a sudden and suspecting she's up to something.
Haimin then announces a new cleaning duty, conveniently asking Soa to grab the supplies from that very same storage room.
Soa reluctantly agrees, getting a thorny, ominous feeling as she says yes. With a swing of the door, she steps into the filthy storage room, complaining about the thick layer of dust. Coughing, she takes another step inside, realizing she doesn't see any cleaning supplies anywhere. But then she finally spots a broom and dustpan tucked away in a dark corner. With a triumphant beam, she grabs her prize, thinking her mission is complete. Slam! The door suddenly shuts behind her with a deafening bang, causing her to jump in shock. Her heart pounds with a nervous badum as she wonders why the door closed so loudly. She tries to brush it off, thinking she got what she came for, but then she pauses to take a closer look. She realizes the broom and dustpan are absolutely filthy and smelly. She questions how anyone is supposed to clean with tools that are this disgusting. She ponders, sarcastically wondering if the goal is to make the auditorium even dirtier. With a determined step, she decides to bring them out anyway, figuring someone else can deal with it. She reaches for the doorknob, only to find it won't turn. Meanwhile, Yusong's concern grows, unable to shake the feeling that he hasn't seen Soa in a while, and wondering where she could have gone. Hyman snaps him out of it, demanding he focus and restart their lines. He stops her, pointing out that Soa has been gone way too long, and asks what Hyman said to her before she left. He recalls seeing them talk from a distance, but couldn't make out the words. Hyman plays it cool, lying that Soa just went to get a drink during her break. Yusung's expression darkens with suspicion, thinking that if her story is true, then why does he have such a terrible feeling about all of this? Bang! Bang! Back in the storeroom, Soa furiously pounds on the door, finally realizing Heyman set her up. She continues to bang on the door with all her might, desperately yelling for help. A single spider web forms with a silent drop, a sign that she's been trapped there for some time. With a frustrated puff, she brushes dust off her uniform, thinking this whole situation is beyond annoying. She looks defeated, realizing she's too far away from the auditorium for anyone to hear her calls for help. Her frustration gives way to determination as she sizes up the locked door, clearly forming a new plan. Out on the gym floor, Hyman is trying to practice with a clearly distracted and worried Yusung. He reasons aloud that Soa should have returned by now if she had only gone to get water. Hyman finally loses her patience and starts to snap at him, but he cuts her off. He tells her firmly that Soa is still missing, and he's going to go look for her. She tries to brush off his concern, insisting Soa will be back and that practice is more important. With a decisive turn, he rejects her plea, telling her to study the script by herself because he's going to find Soa. Stunned by his actions, Hyman flashes back to his worried expression, wondering why he cares so much about Soa. Yusung glances back over his shoulder as if he heard her jealous thoughts and asks, "Excuse me?" Hyman grabs a surprised Yusung's arm, reminding him they're supposed to be practicing their play, which is a show for the two of them as the main characters. She glares, declaring herself the female lead and telling him he should be worried about her, not some girl with an insignificant role. As Hyman demands to know why he's so concerned about Soa, a troubled Yusung begins to answer, but he's cut off by a loud crash from off-screen. With a sudden turn, both Yusung and Hyman look toward the sound, their faces a perfect blend of shock and confusion. A cloud of dust puffs up, revealing a very dusty Soa, her face completely obscured by dirt. Dun-dun! Soa emerges from the dust, cheerfully presenting the filthy cleaning supplies and announcing that she broke the doorknob with the broom to escape. Yusung is absolutely floored, wondering what in the world happened to her, while Hyman just gives her a furious scowl. Later, the practice leader dismisses everyone, congratulating them on another fantastic session. Soa apologizes profusely to the practice leader, who kindly tells her not to worry about the broken doorknob. But as soon as she's told it's fine, Soa turns away with a seething glare, clearly not over it. Hyman watches her from afar with a satisfied, triumphant smirk. Soa's rage practically crackles around her as she imagines confronting the person who ignored her. As the sun sets on the school, the practice leader officially calls it a day and says goodbye to everyone. Walking home, a concerned Hiris tries to talk to Soa, but she just brushes him off, telling him not to worry about it. Soa shoots a frustrated glare sideways, her anger bubbling as she thinks back on the whole mess. Her mind flashes back, getting roped into being a stand-in, getting caught in a lover's quarrel, and the sound of a rustling bag. The memories continue, showing the moment she was trapped in the disgusting, dusty storage room. She concludes it was all Hiris's fault, and the sheer force of her rage crackles so intensely that he physically jumps, wondering what that feeling was. After a pause, Harris tells Soa he needs to make a stop, so she'll have to walk home alone again. She asks where he keeps going, but he just says it's a hobby, leaving her to secretly plot her own de-stressing activity, jujitsu. Hiris internally fumes, outraged that she's out having fun while he's stuck at home, insisting she should be practicing with him instead. Soa's inner monologue is just as fiery. She thinks that whenever he talks, she gets an overwhelming urge to smack him right in the mouth. Her thought about smacking him gives her an idea, and a metaphorical light bulb goes off with a spark. She turns to him with a devious smile, clearly up to something. The two stand facing each other on the sidewalk, Soa with a confident smile, and Hiris looking down at her, intrigued. Done. Soa's eyes go wide in sudden, dawning horror. You're done. Hiris's expression mirrors hers, utterly shocked. You are… BAM! A girl in a martial arts uniform points at them accusingly, yelling, "The handsome jerk! The infant!" Soa sweats bullets, immediately realizing this was a terrible, terrible idea. Inside the dojo, Soa stands awkwardly next to Hiras, clearly regretting her decision to bring him here.
She nervously explains that her hobby is martial arts, where the goal is to fight your opponent.
Hiras's eyes instantly sparkle with excitement at the mention of a fight. But his excitement quickly fades to bewildered shock as he sees who she trains with. Done. He stares blankly at her 3 training partners, who don't exactly look like fearsome warriors. Here covers his mouth in disbelief, asking if she's joking. He can't believe it, scoffing and asking if these twigs are her actual sparring partners.
A visual shows Hirai's perception of her friends as comically skinny, noodle-like figures.
He continues to mock the shortest girl, whose angry growl cuts him off as she demands to know what he just said.
Hirai's turns dismissively, announcing he came for a real duel and asking where the skilled fighters are, all while Soa panics because everyone can hear him.
Soa tries to defend her friends, but Hirai's shuts her down, refusing to spar with weaklings as the entire group begins to growl and scowl at him. The short girl, Ga-young, steps forward, having had enough of his attitude, and asks the jerk if he's any good at fighting. Furious, Ga-young points a finger right at him and challenges him to a match. An intense energy fills the dojo as Ga-young stands ready for a fight, facing down a very surprised Soa and Hirai's. "Ha," Hirai scoffs, asking if she really thinks she can fight him, and stating she's completely outmatched, much to Soa's horror. He turns away again, refusing to fight a child and telling her to value her life, which only makes his new audience angrier. His arrogance makes him freeze as Ga-young calls him out, suggesting he's not cocky, he's just scared of losing. That does it. Hirai's whips around with a ferocious growl, a vein throbbing on his temple. As energy crackles between them, Hirai's accepts her challenge, while Soa weakly tries to stop the impending beatdown. Bam! In the very next moment, Hirai's is seen falling backward, his eyes wide with utter shock. And just like that, Hirai's is knocked out flat on the mat as Ga-young stands victorious, leaving him to wonder what just happened. Lying on the mat, Hirai smutters in disbelief, thinking this is impossible. With a spring, he pops up, declaring himself the best swordmaster in Remium, leaving Ga-young to ask why he's acting so weird. He stares her down, boasting about slaying giant monsters and demanding to know what trick she used on him. Ha! One of Soa's friends laughs, explaining it wasn't a trick. Hirai is just a beginner, and she obviously isn't. The boy with glasses looks confused, pointing to himself and asking, "Huh? Me?" Sprawl! In the next moment, Hirai is back on the mat, completely stunned. His mind reels as he stares at the ceiling, thinking this cannot be happening. With a rise, he gets up and glares at another one of Soa's friends, who flinches under his intense gaze. The boy's face hardens with determination, thinking he must defeat this arrogant newcomer. And Hiras is once again knocked out cold on the floor. Well, that was fast. The boy apologizes, checking if he's okay, while Hiras has a full-blown existential crisis, wailing that his 19 years as a swordmaster meant nothing. Another friend kindly offers the defeated Hiras a bottle of water. With a blank stare, he takes a sip, trying to process his utter failure. A flashback reveals the crucial fact Hiras overlooked. Yusong, whose body he inhabits, has zero athletic or martial arts training. He touches his own soft arm, realizing Yusong's body lacks the muscle he's used to, unlike his own powerful physique. The narration explains that a medieval duke, skilled with a sword, would be completely clueless against jujitsu's joint targeting techniques. It flashes back to Gaiyong, easily putting him in an armbar as he screams in pain, totally unprepared for grappling. Back in the present, Hirai's hangs his head, thinking this must be a dream, while Gaiyong admits it's not really a fair fight.
The boy with glasses points to himself again, asking Gaiyong, "Me?"
Thud. Her expression turns serious, suggesting she's just made a decision.